About 10 months had crawled by since Brandon, his girlfriend Rachel, and their wild crew of YouTubers, Ash Curry, Luigi Kid, Markiplier, and Corix Genshin, had stared down the unimaginable and triumphed. They'd faced off against that deranged, demonic version of SpongeBob, battling through a nightmarish gauntlet of haunted video games and twisted, cursed cartoons, until they finally sent the monster packing, straight to the deepest, hottest pit anyone could imagine. After that, the world exhaled for the first time in years. People smiled again. Kids played games without fear of ghosts in the code. For a while, it felt like the darkness that had stalked them was finally gone for good. With the chaos behind them and normalcy returning, Brandon and Rachel realized how desperately they needed to recharge. They both agreed it was time for a real break, something untainted by horror and madness. So, they booked a trip to Disney World. May there had ever been. Honestly, Rachel's excitement caught Brandon off guard. She'd always been the calm one, but now she was practically buzzing with anticipation, her eyes lighting up at the mere mention of roller coasters and castles. She laughed about hunting for hidden Mickeys and eating way too much cotton candy. For both of them, this trip was supposed to be a symbol, a return to innocence, a place where nightmares couldn't follow. Determined to make the most of it, they decided to tackle the biggest roller coasters first. As they strapped in, Rachel was practically bouncing in her seat, her hands gripping the safety bar with white-knuckled excitement. The coaster launched, whipping around corners at breakneck speed. Rachel's laughter rang out, wild and free, until a sharp turn sent her stomach lurching. Before she knew it, she was hurling over the side, showering an unsuspecting crowd below with her breakfast. When the ride screeched to a halt, she staggered off, dizzy and giggling, looking like she just downed a six-pack in 5 minutes. Brandon couldn't help but laugh along. For the first time in months, they both felt alive. But just as they were catching their breath, their happiness was shattered. Out of the swirling crowd, a man in a Mickey Mouse costume appeared, looming at the edge of their vision. He didn't speak. He didn't even wave. He just lifted a gloved hand and gestured, slow and deliberate. The sight chilled Brandon to the bone. In that silent, looming gesture, Brandon felt the old fear return, a cold, creeping dread he'd hoped he'd left behind with SpongeBob's ashes. It was as if the universe was reminding him, monsters don't just live in video games and cartoons. Rachel's grip tightened on his arm, her voice trembling.
Brandon, don't. This feels wrong. What if it's another trap?
Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape route. Brandon tried to brush it off with a joke, but he saw through his own bravado.
It's just a guy in a costume. What's he gonna do, challenge us to a dance-off?
But deep down, his instincts screamed at him that this was no ordinary Disney magic. Rachel, desperate to keep him from going, tried everything, joking, teasing, even slipping her hand into his, hoping he'd listen to her gut for once. But that old curiosity, that stubborn need to face the unknown, flared up in Brandon. He couldn't help himself. Something about this encounter felt heavier, darker, like it was meant for them specifically. Mickey led them through the park, past smiling families and swirling music, into a building that seemed perfectly ordinary from the outside. But inside, the air grew colder. They followed the mascot deeper and deeper underground, down winding stairwells and through narrow halls where the cheerful Disney melodies faded into a suffocating silence. The further they went, the more Brandon felt like they were descending into another world, a place where laughter had no meaning. Finally, they entered a room so dark that Brandon could barely see his hand in front of his face. As his eyes adjusted, the horrors revealed themselves. Cages lined the walls, each one holding a child. Their faces were gaunt, eyes wide with terror, hands gripping the bars so tightly their knuckles bled. The air was thick with the stench of fear and something far worse. Then, footsteps echoed across the concrete floor, and a hulking figure entered, the man the kids called the Butcher. He was monstrous in size, his face hidden behind a grotesque mask. Without a word, he strode to one of the cages, unlocked it, and dragged out a small, trembling boy. Before Brandon or Rachel could even speak, the Butcher raised a massive cleaver and, with a sickening thud, severed the child's head from his shoulders. Blood splattered the floor. The other children screamed, their voices high and piercing. Rachel collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably.
He was just a kid. He was just a kid, you monster.
Her cries echoed around the chamber, raw and broken. As if things couldn't get worse, the Mickey figure, still silent, began to remove his own head. But this wasn't a simple costume reveal. The sound was sickening, cartilage snapping, bone grinding, wet tissue tearing. What emerged from beneath the mask was not human. Its eyes burned with inhuman malice, its mouth twisted in a predatory grin. This thing had been wearing Mickey's skin like a trophy. The truth hit Brandon and Rachel like a physical blow. Evil hadn't died with SpongeBob. It had just taken on a new face.
God, you're sick.
Brandon spat, fury and terror mixing in his voice. The butcher just smiled, a slow, deliberate grin that dripped with satisfaction. He grabbed a canister of gasoline, splashing it over the cages and the desperate children inside. With a flourish, he struck a match. Flames erupted instantly, devouring everything in their path. The children's screams filled the chamber, echoing off the stone walls, building into a crescendo of agony that would haunt Brandon and Rachel for the rest of their lives. Through the smoke and chaos, the headless Mickey pulled out a strange device, a bomb, with a blinking red timer counting down the seconds. Panic surged through Brandon. He grabbed Rachel, who was frozen with terror, and hoisted her over his shoulder. Adrenaline fueled his escape as he sprinted through the labyrinthine corridors, flames licking at their heels. They burst into the daylight just as the bomb detonated, through the park with apocalyptic force. The ground shook. Buildings collapsed. The joyful sounds of Disney World were replaced by an endless, roaring silence. When the smoke cleared, Brandon and Rachel stood alone amidst the ruins, a wasteland where magic had turned to ash. Millions gone in an instant. The world as they knew it had ended, and somehow, they were the only survivors. This wasn't a haunted game, or a twisted cartoon. This was something far worse, evil in its purest, most relentless form, clawing its way into reality. As Brandon looked at the devastation, he realized the truth. Their fight wasn't over. The nightmares weren't finished with them yet. Somewhere out there, an even greater darkness was waiting, ready to test their limits and threaten everything they had left. And this time, there would be no escape. Their deadliest adventure was only beginning. After Brandon and his girlfriend Rachel witnessed that massacre at Disney World, nothing in their world was ever the same. It wasn't just the violence that haunted him. It was the way reality itself seemed to twist, like some unseen hand was warping the familiar into something monstrous. The memory of it was seared into his mind. The creature that had rampaged through the park looked just like Mickey Mouse, only its proportions were subtly wrong, its cartoon grin stretched too wide, its eyes black and bottomless. The horror hit when it pulled out a bomb, right there in front of everyone, as if it was part of some sick show. Brandon could still taste the smoke in the back of his throat, could still feel the heat from the explosion as he and Rachel sprinted, dodging debris and bodies. Behind them, the happiest place on earth was reduced to fire and ash. They'd survived, but at a cost. Everyone else was gone. Survival, Brandon quickly learned, wasn't the same as living. Rachel hadn't spoken a single word since. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat, staring at nothing, her hands trembling ever so slightly as if she were haunted by ghosts only she could see. It was like something inside her had snapped, leaving an empty shell behind. Brandon tried to be strong, holding their pain on his shoulders, but the images kept looping in his head, the twisted Mickey, the explosion, the blank look on Rachel's face. It weighed on him, crushing and relentless, and he knew he couldn't do it alone. That's why he reached out to Ash Curry. Ash was more than just a friend. She was the kind of person who ran toward danger when everyone else ran away. Their history went deep. Back during the nightmare at Nickelodeon Studios, when that deranged version of SpongeBob and his army of freakish cartoon rejects tried to take over, Ash had been right there with him, never hesitating. Brandon trusted her with his life. So, when he explained what had happened at Disney World and asked if she could look after Rachel for a while, Ash didn't blink. She wrapped Rachel in a gentle hug and whispered,
Don't worry, I'll take care of her. And if you need backup, remember Luigi Kid, Markiplier, Korix Kenshin. We're all just a call away. You don't have to face this on your own.
Hearing that comforted Brandon, but deep down he knew that fixing Rachel, getting her back to who she'd been, was something he might never be able to do. He left Ash's apartment feeling hollow, desperate for some kind of normalcy. He drove aimlessly, highways blurring into each other, city lights giving way to empty stretches of road. Eventually, hunger forced him to stop at a lonely McDonald's glowing in the darkness. Inside, he tried to pretend life was ordinary again. He ordered his usual, a Big Mac meal, fries, Coke, but the taste turned to ash in his mouth. The world felt off, like he was walking through a dream he couldn't wake from. That's when he noticed the clown. At first, Brandon almost laughed. It was Ronald McDonald, but the costume looked mangled, the makeup smeared into a grotesque parody. The clown's smile was more of a leer, his eyes glittering with something cold and hateful. Brandon's unease spiked when a little boy, no older than 7, approached the clown and said with childlike bluntness,
You are not Ronald McDonald. You're uglier.
The clown's plastic grin vanished, replaced by a look so dark and venomous it sent chills down Brandon's spine. Without warning, the clown's hand shot out, grabbing the boy's head. In one swift, horrifying motion, he twisted. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the restaurant, silencing every conversation. The boy's mother shrieked and fainted, collapsing to the floor. The clown's laughter rose, sharp and shrill, bouncing off the walls. Brandon's instincts screamed at him to act, but fear rooted him in place. Ronald's gaze met his, and the clown wagged a finger, taunting him, daring him to intervene. Chaos erupted. Customers screamed, chairs overturned, trays clattered to the ground. Ronald grabbed a vat of boiling grease from behind the counter and dumped it over a man trying to crawl away. The man's screams were short-lived, drowned out by the sounds of pure panic. Brandon felt rage boil up inside him.
You sick-ass clown!
He shouted, voice cracking with fury and horror. Ronald grinned, lips peeling back to reveal yellow, rotting teeth. He yanked out an oversized knife and drove it again and again into the boy's mother, waking her just long enough for her to feel every stab. The brutality was overwhelming. Brandon couldn't take it anymore. He surged forward, intent on tackling the clown, but Ronald caught him mid-stride and hurled him through a plate glass window. The impact knocked the wind out of him. Lying on the concrete outside, Brandon watched through the shattered glass as the clown pressed a button. Suddenly, the air was filled with the hiss and roar of boiling grease flooding the restaurant. People banged on the doors and windows, desperate to escape, but there was nowhere to go. The screams grew muffled, then stopped altogether. In the aftermath, the silence was total, an awful, unnatural void. Shaking, Brandon stood and stared at the carnage. Another massacre. More innocent lives snuffed out in seconds. He felt numb, his grief and guilt twisting into something cold and sharp. This was the second time he'd faced one of these monsters, and both times he'd failed to save anyone. He didn't know where these creatures came from, or why they hid behind the faces of childhood icons only to unleash such horror. But now, the need to understand, to fight back, burned in his chest. He looked up at the night sky, knowing he couldn't do this alone. He would need Ash, and the others, Luigi Kid, Markiplier, Korix Kenshin. He would need all the help he could get. Because whatever force was behind these nightmares, it was only getting started. And Brandon was finally ready to dive into the darkness, and find out just how deep this rabbit hole really went. When I staggered back from the horror show at McDonald's, where Ronald McDonald himself snapped, went berserk, and ended up deep-frying everyone inside, himself included, I could barely breathe. My head spun with the greasy nightmare of it all, the sizzle of flesh, and the echo of screams still fresh in my mind. I needed air, reality, anything not painted in red and gold. My best friend Ash found me outside, her arms wrapped protectively around my girlfriend, Rachel. Rachel hadn't spoken a single word since that other massacre we'd barely survived together. Honestly, I couldn't blame her. Her eyes were empty, haunted, staring past the world. I just about collapsed onto the curb and muttered to Ash.
Get the team.
She nodded, understanding me without question. Not long after, the cavalry arrived, Luigi Kid, bright-eyed and bouncing with nervous energy. Markiplier, jaw set in grim determination. Korix Genshin, cool as ever but with a spark of anxiety in his eyes. Even as they approached, I could feel a flicker of hope fighting its way through the despair. Corey gave me a subtle nod.
What's up, man?
His voice was steady, but I could tell he was bracing himself for the worst. Mark crossed his arms, his expression all business.
We heard you need help fighting monsters again!
The way he said it, you'd think he was talking about some internet challenge, but I knew he understood the stakes. I tried to force a grin, to lighten the mood, but my lips barely cooperated.
Alright, YouTubers. This might be the deadliest fight you've ever faced. Forget the jump scares. These things want your souls.
The truth was, whoever or whatever was behind these massacres had pushed us all to the edge. They'd toyed with our lives, turned our nightmares into bloody reality. But now, I intended to bring the fight to them.
I need you to split up and check out some abandoned places.
I said, handing each of them a slip of paper with their assignment.
Meanwhile, I'll try to help Rachel get back to normal. She's the heart of this group, and we're not leaving her behind.
I tried to sound more confident than I felt.
I'm heading to see a local witch.
I added, maybe grinning a little too wide to hide how scared I was. Markiplier unfolded his note and smirked, though his eyes were wary.
Freddy's Family Diner, huh? You picked this one for me on purpose, King of FNAF, right?
Luigi Kid bounced on his heels, excitement flickering across his face.
Nintendo Land, now that's more my style. Let's go!
For someone who'd seen so much, he still had some spark left. Corey just groaned when he read his.
Man, an abandoned school? You better not be sending me after Baldi.
I chuckled, trying to keep things light.
Relax. Baldi's not gonna be there. Probably.
Ash's hands shook as she looked at hers.
A toy factory. Brandon, you know how I feel about dolls.
Her voice was barely a whisper, and I saw tears welling up in her eyes. Ash had always been brave, but dolls were her limit. I put a hand on her shoulder.
Don't worry. You'll have backup. Besides, maybe these dolls will be on our side for once.
I said it to reassure her, but I wasn't sure I believed it myself.
Alright, get moving. And try not to die.
I barked, channeling my inner drill sergeant, and was rewarded with a few weak smiles. I turned to Rachel, taking her hand in mine. Her fingers were ice cold, but she didn't pull away.
Come on, let's go.
I whispered. We made our way through the deserted streets to the witch's house, a crooked old place that looked like it had grown from the earth itself. The air around it felt thick, charged with something ancient. The witch was waiting on her porch, her eyes dark and knowing.
Come in,
She said, her voice deeper than I remembered, steady and serious. Somehow, she already knew our names.
you two have a long and dangerous destiny ahead of you.
She intoned, and the weight of her words pressed down on me. I tried to keep my voice from shaking.
If you know so much, then tell us. Do we win or not?
But before she answered, I pleaded.
First, can you help my girlfriend?
The witch didn't hesitate. She began chanting, the words strange and lilting, wrapping around us like invisible threads. Suddenly, I felt the tension flow out of Rachel's hand. Her eyes focused, the haunted glaze lifting as if the world had finally let her go. She blinked, her voice clear and fragile.
Brandon, what happened?
She looked at me, and I saw the girl I'd fallen in love with, not a shell. Relief made me dizzy, but I pressed forward.
Now tell us, who's really behind all these killings?
I demanded. I needed answers, needed to know there was something we could fight. The witch reached for her crystal ball. It glowed with a strange, inner light as words formed inside. Government. My stomach dropped.
What do they want?
I asked, the question burning in my mind. The ball pulsed, and new words floated up.
They want souls to resurrect a demon.
Ice crawled up my spine.
So everything we've been through. fighting that demonic Mario, banishing evil SpongeBob. All those haunted games. It was all because of the government?
She nodded, her face grave.
They created the haunted games. They cursed the cartoons. They were searching for vessels strong enough to withstand the demon's return. They didn't know about you before, but now you're on their radar. All of you.
I felt the ground tilt beneath me.
Do we win?
I whispered, dreading the answer. The witch peered into the swirling depths of the crystal. Her face twisted in pain, and then, without warning, she began to sob. Tears streamed down her face, then turned crimson. Blood poured from her eyes as she screamed, the sound primal and raw.
No. So much destruction. No. They're here.
A crash shattered the front door exploded inward. A figure strode in, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a suit and dark glasses. There was something off about him, something wrong in the way he moved. The witch tried to speak, but he raised his gun and shot her, once, twice, 5 times, until she slumped to the floor, lifeless. He turned his gun on Rachel. Time slowed as I leapt between them. Pain exploded through my body, a fiery, tearing agony. I felt blood soaking my shirt, the world fading to black. Something inside me broke, or maybe it woke up. My vision swam, and then everything went cold and sharp. My eyes burned, turning black as night. I was no longer just myself. I was more, or less, or something else entirely. With an animal roar, I tackled the hitman. His glasses flew off, revealing eyes that were rotting, dull and lifeless. He wasn't human. He was a corpse animated by some evil force, a puppet on invisible strings. I fumbled for anything useful and found a lighter in my pocket. With trembling hands, I flicked it on and set him ablaze. The stench of burning flesh was overwhelming, but I didn't look away. He went up like dry tinder, gone in seconds, leaving only a charred outline behind. I wiped blood from my mouth, breathing hard.
Looks like things just got real.
I muttered, half to myself, half to Rachel. Rachel stared at me, her lips twitching into a strange, wild smile.
You know, I suddenly really want to have sex.
I burst out laughing, a deep, cathartic sound that shook out some of the fear. Even after everything, she still had that spark.
Let's head home. I'll make it worth your while.
I teased, giving her a wink. She squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with something fierce and alive. But as we walked away from the witch's ruined house, I knew our story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The government was out there, hunting us, twisting reality into nightmares for their own monstrous purpose. The games and cartoons we once loved were now weapons against us, and the line between hero and monster was blurring fast. But as long as evil stalked the world, as long as even one of us was left standing, we'd keep fighting. Because sometimes, surviving is just the beginning, and now, it was our turn to play God, or demon, or whatever it took to win.
Hey, it's Luigi Kid here.
Normally, you'll catch me on YouTube, streaming creepy Mario horror games or digging into lost media. But this time, I've ended up somewhere way stranger, a so-called abandoned Nintendo land that, by all logic, shouldn't even exist. Supposedly, Nintendo Land opened up in 2021, this bright, sparkling theme park full of happy families and grinning mascots. But the place I'm walking through is nothing like that. Everything's decayed, overgrown, and falling apart, as if it's been left to rot since the late 90s. Creeping vines crawl up rusted pipes, the air smells like mold and dust, and the silence is so deep it feels unnatural. It makes no sense, right? How can a park that's only a few years old look like a relic from a lost era? I'm wandering deeper in, picking my way over broken bricks and toppled question blocks, and suddenly, this noise shatters the silence. Loud, echoing moans rolling through the park. I'm not exaggerating. I almost jump out of my skin, heart pounding. The sound is weirdly human, echoing off the metal and plastic, but twisted with something almost mechanical underneath. Driven by a mix of dread and curiosity, I follow the noise, ducking under a faded superstar archway, until I wind up in front of this massive, corroded Mario warp pipe, half buried in the ground. I stare into the darkness inside, wondering what could be making that sound. A ghost? A couple sneaking around in some dead theme park for kicks? I honestly hope it's the latter. I'd rather stumble across awkward teenagers than anything supernatural. Still, my curiosity gets the better of me, and I keep poking around, trying to piece together why this place even exists. Who built this park, and why did they abandon it? Why is there no record of it anywhere? The deeper I go, the more the questions pile up, nagging at the back of my mind. Every corner feels wrong, like I'm being watched, and the air grows colder. That's when I spot it, a looming Mario statue, bigger than life, standing in a pitch-black corner of what used to be a gift shop. Its paint is peeling, its gloves are stained, and just as I'm about to turn away, I swear its eyes blink. For a split second, I see glassy black pupils glint in the dark. My skin prickles with goosebumps, but something drives me to push on, deeper into the park's heart. Then I hear it, heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing behind me, crunching on broken tiles. I whirl around, but there's nobody there. The shadows seem to stretch and crawl along the walls. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream tears through the air, high-pitched, raw, and desperate. Instinct takes over, and I bolt toward the exit, weaving between crumbling stalls and shattered power-ups. I stumble into the open, just in time to see something straight out of a nightmare, a naked man being devoured, bit by bit, by the enormous Mario statue. The statue's mouth is impossibly wide, and its teeth, yes, teeth, tear into flesh. A girl, her face twisted in terror, sprints past me, her screams echoing off the silent rides.
I knew people were doing weird stuff in here.
I mutter, half in shock, trying to convince myself this is all some twisted prank. But reality slams back as the Mario statue turns, its neck twisting with a sickening crack, and those soulless, inky eyes focus right on me.
Let's go! It's a meal time!
The Mario statue croaks, its voice warped and guttural, echoing with 1,000 wrong notes. The ground starts to tremble, dust sifting down from the cracked ceiling. I realize, with mounting dread, that Mario isn't alone. From the shadows, more statues emerge: Princess Peach, Luigi, Yoshi, Daisy, Rosalina, even Toad. Each one looks more twisted and monstrous than the last, their faces contorted, eyes empty and black, joints bending in unnatural ways. They all turn to stare at me, silent and hungry, as if I'm the last piece of cake at a party of starving guests. Panic surges through me, but I refuse to freeze. I run, adrenaline pumping, darting through the ruins like I'm being chased by FNAF animatronics on nightmare mode. I hear Peach's voice, drifting through the debris, impossibly sweet and sing-song.
Come out! Where are you?
She calls, but the sugary tone does nothing to hide the hunger beneath. Things spiral fast. The statues tear through the park, smashing walls, ripping roofs off buildings, toppling what's left of the once happy kingdom. Mario himself claws the roof off the building I'm hiding in, his enormous, gloved hand reaching for me. I try to scramble away, but he grabs me effortlessly, his grip cold and crushing, and tosses me into his gaping mouth. I'm certain it's the end. I brace for pain, for oblivion. But instead, I tumble through darkness and land hard on something soft and pulsating. The air here is thick and hot, and I realize I'm not in a stomach, but in some kind of warped, endless tunnel, a portal, maybe. I stagger to my feet, and what I see is worse than anything before. I'm standing in a hellish parody of Mario's world. The sky is red, the ground is slick and shifting, and everywhere I look, I see them, thousands, maybe millions, of Marios. Every version from every game, every era, their faces twisted and wrong, their eyes locked onto me. I'm completely surrounded.
You're in our world now!
One of the Marios intones, his voice layered and echoing like a chorus of lost souls. Another one steps forward, dressed like a hitman, his gloved hands flexing.
This is where Marios go when we die! You're Brandon's friend, aren't you? Brandon's the one who killed us!
I feel my knees buckle, my breath caught in my throat. All I can do is gulp, realizing just how doomed I am. All because Brandon couldn't resist haunted games and cursed cartoons. Now I'm trapped in Mario's nightmare realm, a place where the game never ends, and the monsters are all too real. He tapped the katana at his hip. Solid, familiar, the only thing in this whole broken world that never glitched, never lagged, never betrayed him to the dark. If he closed his eyes, he could almost forget the low buzz of static at the edges of his vision, the way things sometimes flickered out of sync. His chat was already spiraling into chaos. Baldi jump scare incoming. And run while you can. Scrolled so fast the words blurred together, a digital scream he could barely follow. But Corey just grinned, teeth sharp in the pale monitor glow.
Nah, we're pros at horror now. No mad demons taking me down tonight. Not this time. Not ever.
The front door hung sideways from rotted hinges. Half-chewed would nod down to splinters where something, had kicked it in, maybe years, maybe decades ago. Corey shoved it open with his boot, the screeching whine knifing straight through his nerves. He caught the scent immediately. Old crayons, sour sweat, mildew so thick it clawed at the back of his throat. It was the kind of smell that stuck, that filled your lungs and made you want to gag.
Alright, it's just a building.
He muttered, stepping over a heap of shattered alphabet blocks, their edges dark with old stains.
Just a super creepy, definitely haunted, probably murdery building.
His flashlight sliced the dark open, revealing a classroom fossilized in time. Little chairs overturned, their plastic legs snapped and twisted like broken bones. Construction paper stars dangled from the ceiling, edges curled, brown with age, some flecked with what looked like dried blood. Corey's breath snagged when he spotted a notebook on a desk. Fresh, impossibly fresh, with messy kid handwriting scrawled across the pages, the ink still glistening.
Chat, why is there fresh paper in here?
He knew the answer. He just didn't want to say it. Then silence snapped. His flashlight wobbled as he jerked it toward the far wall, and froze. His stomach twisted, cold, and hollow.
Wait, hold up, chat, you seeing this?
The colors were faded, but unmistakable. Ban's goofy, too wide grin, Bambalina's pigtails like twisted ropes, Jumbo Josh looming, green and monstrous, in the corner. Corey's mouth went dry, tongue heavy.
Oh no! Nah! No way! We are not in Bamban's kindergarten! That's impossible. That's...
The chat exploded, neon pink. Game over LOL. S and UDD flooding the screen. Corey tried to laugh, but it came out thin and brittle.
Okay, silver lining, at least it's not Baldi, right?
He ran his light along the mural, catching slow Celine's half-lidded eyes, Nabnab's jagged teeth. The paint cracked but somehow fresh. Too fresh. Like someone had been here, painting over old horror with new.
Who's keeping this place up? And why?
A sound ripped through the air, a wet, skittering noise from the hallway, like something crawling on the tiles, claws scraping bone. Corey spun, katana half out, heart pounding, before he even realized he'd moved.
Nope. We're not doing this. We're not doing this.
He flicked on night vision. The camera's feed turned sickly green, showing empty tiles stretching into blackness. Then something darted, low, fast, a shadow barely more than a ripple.
Okay, what was...
The notebook on the desk fluttered open, pages rattling like teeth. Corey stopped breathing. The pages were covered in frantic scribbles, stick figures with way too many arms, eyes gouged out, red crayon smeared everywhere, bleeding into the paper. One phrase repeated, over and over, in shaky capitals. "They're hungry!" A giggle echoed down the hallway, high and broken, like someone grinding glass in their throat, or running a laugh backward through a broken tape deck.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Corey whispered, voice trembling. The chat went feral, run, and streamer diff, streaming by, but his body locked up, legs refusing to work. The giggle twisted, bubbling up into a wet, gurgling sound, then stopped, cut off hard, like a head snapped backward. Corey's grip on the katana tightened until his knuckles bled white.
Oh, right, chat.
He muttered, voice fraying.
Either we've got one lost toddler, or...
A chair scraped behind him. He spun, blade ready, but the room was empty. The notebook lay open, pages fluttering like wings in a wind that didn't exist, the air perfectly, horribly still. Then the lights snapped on. Not the busted old fluorescents. These were new bulbs, burning with a sickly, jaundiced glow. The mural's colors bled in the light, Ban's grin stretching wider, splitting his face, the painted eyes catching the light and reflecting it back, hungry and alive. Corey's camera fizzed, static crawling across the screen.
Oh, hell no!
He breathed, barely a whisper. The chat detonated, backdoor now, and blink mother. Scrolling too fast to read, but Corey's eyes stayed glued to the hallway. Something pale flickered at the edge of the camera's view, way too tall, way too thin, its fingers twitching spasmodically. The skittering came back, louder, closer. Corey exhaled a sharp, shaky breath and clicked his tongue.
Alright, new plan, we leave.
He edged toward the emergency exit, rusted, warped, but still there, when a tiny handprint slapped against the window. It was small, but wrong, inhuman. 4 fingers splayed too wide, the thumb twisted at a sickening angle, the palm smeared with something dark and wet. The chat lost its mind. Honestly, Corey didn't blame them.
Nope, we're going out the front.
He spun and stopped dead. His stomach flipped, panic spiking as the world seemed to lurch and fracture. The floor just dropped away, and suddenly he was inside a rusted elevator that hadn't been there seconds ago. The metal cage shuddered, the smell of rot and copper thick in the air, as it started to sink, grinding down, deeper and deeper. The buttons glowed, B1, B2, B3, the numbers scratched out with furious, childish marker strokes, blood smearing the panel.
Chat?
He hissed, pressing himself against the grimy wall, katana up.
When did this place get a basement?
The elevator rattled, and somewhere below, something started screaming. Not human. Not anymore. The elevator lurched violently and shuddered to a stop at B3. The overhead lights buzzed, flickering, as the doors screeched open with a metallic groan that echoed down the concrete shaft. Right away, Corey was hit with the stench, coppery, sour, underneath the chemical tang of cleaner that just barely masked something rotten. Before him stretched a hallway lined with lockers, small, battered, painted a sickly institutional green now smeared with streaks of something dark and half-dried. Blood, Corey realized, blood or worse, sticky and congealed in long handprints he desperately tried not to think about. At the far end, a single bulb swung on its cord, casting erratic, stuttering light. Shadows jittered and crawled along the walls, elongating and twisting like something alive. Corey's camera feed glitched violently, the edges fragmenting into static, colors bleeding and warping until it looked like a VHS tape melting in the sun.
Okay, new plan.
He muttered, his voice trembling, only partially for the chat watching his stream.
We find the stairs. Now no more exploring.
He stepped out, boots squeaking on the grimy tile. As he moved, the lockers began to rattle, a metallic clatter that started softly but quickly became a deliberate rhythm, following his every step. The sound was wrong, like fingernails on bone. Corey didn't dare look back. He knew better. He'd watched enough horror streams, lived enough internet nightmares for that. But his chat? They were already spamming the feed with emojis and frantic messages as, behind him, a locker door creaked open, hinges shrieking in protest. The sound was slow, deliberate, like something was savoring the moment. Inside, he glimpsed a heap of broken crayons fused together with something black and sticky, and sitting atop it, one flawless, glossy red shoe, a child's size, the kind a kindergartner might wear on their first day. Except this shoe twitched, spasming with a life of its own, flexing and curling like the legs of a spider dying on its back. Corey's stomach lurched, and he picked up his pace.
Nope, we're not doing locker jump scares today. We're better than this. Right, chat?
He hissed, voice cracking. A giggle drifted through the air, high-pitched, gurgling, and sticky wet, like someone laughing while drowning. It was right behind his ear. Corey's heart hammered as his gaze snapped to a classroom door hanging half open, its windows smeared with bloody handprints too small to be adult. Inside, Something pale and hunched crouched in the corner, back turned, rocking gently.
Hey, kiddo?
Corey called, voice strangled and taut, each word a desperate plea. The thing rotated its head with a nauseating crack, turning far too far, and revealed only a smooth, featureless oval where a face should have been. No eyes, no mouth, just blank skin, stretching and twitching, as if something pressed against it from the inside. The faceless thing cocked its head, studying him like a dog trying to decipher a trick. Then it screamed, a sound that wasn't human, wasn't animal, was nothing but pure, raw agony, shrill enough to shatter glass. Every bulb in the hallway burst in a chain reaction, spraying shards into the dark. For a moment, Corey glimpsed streaks of red splattering the ceiling as the filaments burned out, and then everything was pitch black. Behind him, the elevator doors slammed shut with a final, echoing clang. Corey didn't wait, didn't dare. He bolted, katana unsheathed and scraping along the wall, sparks flying, running blind as the skittering multiplied behind him. Hundreds of tiny, chittering legs scrabbling over tile, walls, and ceiling, closing in from every angle. Something cold and slick slapped at his ankles, and a low, guttural moan pulsed through the darkness. His flashlight flickered desperately back to life just as he reached the end of the corridor. Painted across the wall was a mural. Ban's monstrous grin stretched from ear to ear, teeth too many, too sharp, gums slick with glistening red. Painted hands, grotesquely oversized, reached out of the wall, their fingers bending and flexing like broken spiders, nails painted with blood. Corey slid to a stop, chest heaving, pulse roaring in his ears.
You've got to be kidding.
He gasped, the words barely audible. The mural wasn't just moving anymore, it was alive, pulsating with a sick rhythm. Ban's painted fingers curled and flexed, the wall bulging and throbbing as if something massive was pushing from the other side. The air vibrated with wet, sucking sounds. Corey's flashlight trembled in his grip as he staggered backward, boots slipping and something viscous pooling around his feet. He glanced down. The liquid was red, thick, and reeked of iron, fresh blood, spreading from under the lockers and the classroom doors.
God, if this turns into a fridge moment, I swear.
He managed, but his voice was drowned out by the cacophony behind him. The skittering erupted into a storm of tiny, clicking joints, echoing, multiplying, filling every inch of the hallway with insectal horror. Something brushed his leg and left a burning cold in its wake. Corey didn't look back. He couldn't. He ran, heart pounding in his throat, as the darkness closed in and the mural's painted hands reached, stretching, longing to drag him in. Corey crashed through the splintered doorway into the next room, lungs raw and burning as if he'd inhaled bleach. The place looked like a nursery designed by someone who never met a child, walls mottled with peeling animal stickers, their faces warped into grotesque grins, lullabies scrawled in crayon and faded to ghostly whispers by the sun. The smell hit him instantly, the cloying reek of sour milk layered over something feathery, wet, almost metallic, like an abattoir disguised with baby powder. His flashlight beam cut through the gloom, jittering across the glistening floorboards. Something pink and twitching zipped from the shadow of a shattered crib.
Chat, are those?
They were birds, technically, if bird meant a nightmare's fever dream. Little balls of twitchy fluff, pink as raw meat, each about knee-high, wings nothing more than malformed stubs. Their beaks were monstrous, jagged, too large for their lolling heads. They didn't chirp, they screamed, a piercing, warbling note that dragged shivers down Corey's spine. Their eyes were the worst part, too round, bulging, glassy, the wrong shade of almost human. They blinked at him, heads cocked, the way puppies might, if puppies were the spawn of some deranged taxidermist.
Hell no.
Corey breathed, stumbling back as one waddled up and jabbed his shoelace with a beak that clicked and snapped like cheap plastic dentures. The chat window erupted. Kill it with fire, BRO, what are those? Those are Opala's kids. OMFG. But Corey barely registered the scrolling panic. He was already backing up, heart pounding, as the room trembled. Something massive shifted behind the frosted glass at the far end, an immense, hunched shadow, wings unfurling in slow, deliberate menace. Every instinct screamed trap. Fight or flight twisted into pure terror. Corey dove, snatching the nearest chick by the scruff of its downy neck. It shrieked, legs spinning, as he shoved it against the push bar, his hands shaking.
Sorry, little dude.
He muttered through clenched teeth, then slammed the door open with his shoulder. She stood there, Opala Eagle. But not the pastel mascot from the menu screen. This was a monster's parody, wings raw and ragged, skin stretched over bone, claws gouging ruts in the concrete. Her neck snaked, segmented snake-like, ending in a beak gaping wide enough to swallow him headfirst. No sound came out, but her eyes, cold, bottomless, drilled right through him. The chick wailed in Corey's fist. Opala's head jerked, those hollow eyes locking onto her child with terrifying intent. She let out a guttural, bubbling moan, a sound dredged from the pit where lullabies turned to dirges. Corey didn't think, didn't breathe. He just moved. His katana flashed, slicing through the chick's neck. Pink fluff and arterial blood exploded across his sleeve. The headless body convulsed, spasming in his grip. Opala froze, her scream cut short, the air thick with the scent of iron and rot. Then she snapped. With a shriek that tore holes in his eardrums, Opala lunged. Her claws shredded the concrete, sparks spraying as she barreled at him. Corey barely got the katana up in time. Her beak smashed into the blade with a metallic screech that vibrated through his bones. He staggered, boots sliding through the sticky drift of pink feathers.
No, no, no.
He howled, spinning, swinging wildly. The steel bit into her neck, deeper, deeper, until something gave way with a revolting crunch. Cartilage, tendon, bone, he felt them all snap. Her head tumbled to the floor, bounced, rolled through a puddle of blood and disappeared under a crib. The rest of her collapsed, trembling, wings twitching before going limp. Chat went berserk. Bro, WTF did I just see? You killed the bird MOM? Streamer war crimes loop. So much blood, Jesus Christ. Corey didn't stop. He rammed his katana through Opala's last staring eye, twisting until the blade ground against the socket. Black gel and blood oozed down the handle, pooling on the floor.
Y'all saw that, right?
His voice quivered. He wiped the blade on her shredded feathers, hands slick with gore, chest heaving.
Self-defense, clearly.
Around him, the chicks scattered, shrieking, their glassy eyes huge with terror. One tugged at his shoe, desperate to drag him away from the carnage, leaving pink smears on the floor. And then, everything flickered, the world shuddering around him. The lights overhead buzzed, stuttering, casting the room in sickly, jaundiced flashes. Something stood at the front of the classroom, a figure tall and skeletal, her pigtails drooping like nooses. Bambolina. Her smile stretched impossibly wide, exposing rows of tiny, jagged teeth. Her plastic eyes glinted, catching the light in pinprick flashes that burrowed into Corey's skull.
Oh.
She sang, her voice syrupy and layered with static, as she tilted her head so far left that vertebrae audibly popped.
Looks like we have a new student.
Corey gripped the katana tighter, but suddenly it felt weightless, flimsy, nothing but a toy in a room built for nightmares. The classroom chairs were bolted to the floor, too small for anyone but a child, and stained with something dark and crusted. Off to the side, a round table stood alone, its wood splintered, the grain blackened as if burned or saturated with old blood. Bambolina's fingers twitched, each joint bending backwards, cracking, stretching.
You're one of the unpopular kids.
She crooned, disappointment dripping from every word.
That means you have to sit at the unpopular table.
Her giggle stuttered, skipping like a corrupted audio file, echoing in Corey's skull. He shuffled back, boots scraping in a sticky mess of feathers and blood, but the door behind him hissed and sealed, trapping him inside the nightmare classroom. Chat exploded. Dodge! Her eyes! Her eyes! She's moving wrong. But Bambolina was already advancing, body jerking in broken, stop-motion spasms, her shadow stretching impossibly long across the blood-stained floor. Corey blew out a ragged sigh through his teeth and slumped into his seat, the exhaustion in his bones louder than his breath. The old wood groaned beneath him, the legs shrieking with a tortured scrape that echoed off the too close walls like a warning. For a second, Corey thought the chair might collapse, or bite him. At the front, Bambolina spun around, her pigtails lashing the air like whips, wild and alive as snakes. Her eyes snapped to Corey, black pits ringed with white, and her mouth twisted into something that tried to be a smile but looked more like a wound.
No noise.
She snapped, voice suddenly ancient, sharp as broken glass, slicing through the classroom's hush. Her knuckles went white around a stick of chalk as she scrawled Lesson 1 across the board, the letters dragging down the slate in thick, glistening trails, syrupy and viscous, as if the chalk itself was bleeding. On Corey's battered camera, the live stream feed glitched and sputtered, screen flickering as the timestamp crawled backward. 11:59 p.m., 11:58, 11:57, like time itself was unraveling, pulling him deeper into nightmare. Bambolina began humming, off-key and tuneless, some ancient nursery song that made Corey's skin prickle with cold. The sound wormed into his skull, coiling behind his eyes, making him want to claw at his own ears. The unpopular table wasn't empty tonight. In the center squatted a crude lump of clay, shaped almost like a child, but wrong, its arms too long, its squat body hunched, its face a mash, twisted scream, mouth gaping in silent agony. Corey's hand moved without thinking, fingertips brushing the clay's cheek. It was hot, hotter than flesh, pulsing with a fever that was almost alive. The chat exploded in frantic messages as the clay thing twitched, its mouth stretching wider and wider, the clay splitting, oozing dark red from its lips. Bambolina didn't even glance back.
Today's lesson
She sang, her voice honey-sweet and rotten.
is sharing.
The chalk snapped in her fist, splintering and sending a fine spray of dust across the board like bone shards. Something scuttled under the table, quick, hungry. Corey jerked his knees up and barely dodged a slick, unfinished clay hand that shot out, fingers fused and glistening, nails sharp as needles. It scraped his boot, leaving a bloody smear. The chat went wild with panic and gore emojis. Bambolina giggled, the sound bubbling up from her throat, high, shrill, and wrong, a sound that didn't fit the mouth it came from.
Oh, you're popular with the unpopular kids.
She whispered, her neck bending backward, vertebrae popping one after another as her chin pressed deep into her spine. Her smile split wider, lips tearing as blood trickled down her chin. The clay figure lurched upright, limbs stretching, joints popping, fingers weaving together like dough so wet it dripped, dripping red onto the floor. Corey's katana was already half drawn when the lights snapped off, plunging the room into a darkness so deep he could taste it, metallic, suffocating. He didn't wait. He bolted, boots skidding through sticky puddles. Bambolina's laughter slithered after him, ragged and gasping, her footsteps stuttering like a broken metronome, echoing through the black. The door slammed behind him, hard enough to rattle every locker in the hall, the metal doors trembling like they feared what was coming. Corey's lungs burned, throat raw with panic, as he rounded a corner, and crashed into something cold, damp, and yielding.
Yo, what?
He gasped, hands sinking wrist deep into something that felt like raw liver. The thing blinked, six lidless, milky eyes rolling and focusing on his face, set in a face like a melted candle, slug-like and glistening. Slow Celine blocked the corridor, her massive shell scraping the ceiling, peeling away paint and plaster with a sound like fingernails on bone. Corey gagged, bow rising as the smell of rot and blood filled his nose.
Chat, we got a snail situation.
At the far end of the corridor, Bambolina's shadow stretched impossibly long across the floor, her pigtails writhing like severed electrical cords. Corey didn't hesitate. He leapt onto Celine's back, boots slipping on the glistening slickness of her shell, a shell riddled with cracks and dark stains that looked suspiciously like dried blood.
Move, girl.
He shouted, smacking her neck with the flat of his blade, leaving a red smear. Celine hissed, a wet, guttural sound. Her eyes spasmed, and then she lunged forward, faster than any snail should move, slime spraying from under her as she surged down the corridor. Bambolina's shriek shattered the air, full of hatred and hunger, just before Celine's massive body slammed her into the wall. The sound was sickening, a wet, meaty crunch, bones shattering, blood exploding in a wide arc across the lockers.
Bye.
Celine gurgled, her voice thick, bubbling with blood, as Corey slipped off her back near an old, battered elevator, its doors dented and stained with black streaks. The doors creaked open, revealing nothing but a gaping chasm of darkness, the smell of rust and rot wafting out. Corey hesitated, just a heartbeat, then turned back to Celine, her massive body writhing, blood oozing from cracks in her shell.
Sorry, big girl.
He muttered. In one smooth, practiced motion, his katana flashed through the air. Celine's eyes dropped to the floor with a wet, splattering sound, like overripe fruit, her scream echoing down the corridor, a sound of pure, animal agony as she thrashed, slime and blood spraying the walls, painting everything red and black. Corey dove into the elevator, boots slipping in gore. The doors crashed shut, sealing him inside. Bandolina's furious shrieks and Celine's dying thrashes were cut off, leaving only the low hum of the elevator and Corey's ragged breathing. The car jolted, then dropped so suddenly Corey's teeth slammed together, blood filling his mouth from a bitten tongue. Above the door, the display flickered and spasmed. Before, the playroom.
Playroom my ass.
Corey spat, wiping viscous snail blood from his blade with shaking hands. The chat lost its mind. Asterisk. Bruh, you monster. Asterisk. Snail sighed. Asterisk. Blood for the blood god. But Corey only listened for another sound. Something was moving above him, something heavy, dragging, and relentless. The thump, thump, thump of something alive, something hungry, getting closer. The elevator lights flickered, and a single, sticky drop of blood fell from the ceiling, splattering on Corey's cheek, cold as death. The elevator's shutter lingered, metal groaning like a wounded beast, and Corey tightened his grip on his katana. The doors scraped open, coughing up stale air thick with the stink of old carpets and rusty iron. But underneath, a stench worse than rot soured the hallway. His flashlight, barely hanging on, threw jagged shadows at the playroom's mouth.
Okay, chat.
He grumbled, stepping forward.
We're gonna.
And suddenly his boot found nothing. The empty space nearly claimed him. Corey yanked himself back just as his pulse hammered insanely in his chest. The hallway wasn't just uneven, it was gone, eaten up by a hungry pit stretching wide, gaping like the maw of something that was never meant to see daylight. His beam darted along the edge and showed him tiles shattered, planks split, the foundation torn up as though gnawed away by something with an appetite for structures.
What kind of building code?
He started, but a thin, scratching sound slithered out of the pit. Something was coming up. Adrenaline burning under his skin, he pressed tight to the wall, fingernails scraping cold, damp concrete. The whole corridor was thick with holes, some barely big enough to swallow an ankle, others yawning wide enough for a car. His light caught something moving down in one, a shadow quick and clever, skirting the edge of the beam. He swallowed the bile rising in his throat.
Chat, I don't like this.
Then static rasped in his earpiece, fizzing out, gone. Silence ate the rest. His phone blinked once and died, the black screen staring up at him like another pit.
No, no, no.
Corey smacked the phone, desperate. Useless. Chat was gone. Camera, gone. He was well and truly alone. The realization punched him deep, a cold knot in his guts. Only light came from his flickering flashlight, and every second, it got weaker. He scrambled backward, boots slipping over the pit's edge. Too late. The ground broke apart with a crack, and he dropped, flashlight spinning away into darkness. Corey never managed more than the start of a scream before the abyss caught him. Impact. He didn't smash apart. It was softer than expected, like landing on a mound of soggy, blood-soaked mattresses. Still, his vision swam, blackness mottling his eyes. The air reeked, moldy fabric softener tangled with copper, just like something you'd inhale standing over old, clotted blood.
Finally, you're waking up. I was getting really bored, and that fella ain't much for conversation.
A voice screeched high and glitchy, Bambolina's, warped, disjointed. Corey opened his eyes, found himself sprawled on a carpet that looked like it had soaked up decades of fluid, in a room lit by a bulb that flickered like a dying firefly. Circus animal wallpaper peeled in ragged sheets, curling across the walls. Bambolina lounged on a skewed table, her plastic eyes reflecting the sick overhead bulb. Next to her, Nab Nab huddled, twisted and slack, teeth snapping shut with no sound. In the corner, Captain Fiddles jerked, his spider limbs quivering and curling like he wasn't quite finished dying. Bambolina tilted her head until her pigtails touched the warped table.
Plus, it's scary.
She giggled, grin stretching like a wound.
That big green guy keeps checking in on us. I think he thinks we're toys.
Corey's heart hammered hard enough to make him dizzy. Bambolina's words wormed their way under his skin, lighting every nerve on fire. The bulb overhead sputtered, once, twice, throwing erratic shadows across Nab Nab's twitching jaw.
Wait.
Corey hissed, shuffling upright.
We're alive in here. Someone's got us trapped, like action figures.
He gripped the katana, but the blade felt lifeless, a toy, not a weapon. Bambolina's smile never faded.
You catch on fast.
Her head bended sideways, ear brushing her shoulder with a wet, sticky sound.
But he listens.
Her plastic eyes darted up, following brown water stains that spread like cancer over the ceiling. Low, steady thuds vibrated the walls, heavy, exact. Footsteps. The bulb's glow shifted, sickly yellow bleeding into nauseous green. Bambolina's pigtails stiffened. Corey obeyed, stumbling to a tiny wooden seat, just as the door handle rattled. Nab Nab's limbs folded in with brittle clicks, collapsing into a pile of angles. Captain Fiddles froze mid-twitch, his legs curling into a spiral as tight as a snare. The door groaned open. A chill swept in, thick with the stink of wet newspaper and laboratory chemicals. Corey held his breath, muscles locked. From the corner, the world's largest, green-fleshed hand, it looked sculpted from death itself, gripped the doorframe. Fingers were thick, too many joints, nails cracked and rotten. A single, milky eye peered inside, pupil bloating as it swept the room. It landed on him. Corey's guts twisted. That eye lingered, bulged, then the door swung closed again. No sound. No explanation.
I have to get the hell out.
Corey rasped, throat raw, his voice scraped through the empty room. The green hand's shadow still stained the doorframe, like mold, like blood left behind after cleanup. Corey's fingers twitched for his katana, but Bambolina watched him, head tilted in warning. The air stank, burned rubber and cardboard mush crawling up the back of his tongue. Nab Nab unfolded himself, joints clicking like broken machinery, teeth snapping shut again and again. Captain Fiddles still curled in his corner, but his spider legs trembled, ready to leap. Bambolina slid off the table, too smooth, liquid, something that should never have moved like that.
He checks twice.
She whispered, her voice glitching, skipping, stuttering. The bulb flickered, in tune with her words. Corey's pulse drummed mercilessly, loud enough that he wondered if the monster upstairs could hear.
We move now.
He growled, eyeing the room's only window, a scum-coated rectangle by the ceiling. Too high. Too small. Still, he shuffled toward it, boots whispering over the rug. Bambolina giggled, the sound snapping through the room like a cracked bone.
Adorable.
She crooned, neck stretching to leer over Corey's shoulder.
You think it's real?
Her finger, cold, sharp, tapped the glass. It rippled. Outside wasn't outside. It was a void black, floating crayon scribbles bobbing like corpses. He missed the chat. Would have loved to hear them lose their minds now. A heavy thud shook everything, much closer. Captain Fiddles screeched, nails on chalkboard horror, flinging himself at the door, legs scrabbling and smeared trails of black gunk across wood.
Distraction.
Nab Nab rasped, voice brittle and dry, too dry. He snatched Corey's wrist. His bones felt too thin, too sharp.
Run.
Corey didn't wait. He tore away, Nab-Nab's fingers slipping off, boots pounding down a hallway that pulsed green, walls swelling, contracting, almost breathing. He rounded a corner just as something huge battered the door behind him, exploding wood into daggers, shaking the floor. He didn't dare look back. Dead end. A pit split the hall, jagged edges like ripped skin. And over it, a head suspended in midair, like someone had distilled terror and let it float. Skin waxy, stretched so tight it threatened to rip, skull bulging, features melting in all the wrong directions. Eyes, black, bottomless voids, clicked open and dilated, mouth splitting into a smile that wasn't meant for anything alive, teeth framed by a jaw that broke wider than any doll's should.
Nope.
Corey stumbled backwards, slammed his shoulders against the wall.
Chat, if you can see this, I am not staring down Discount Slenderman.
He lurched left, ramming through swinging doors into light. Too bright, fluorescent hell, the air pulsed white, flickering like bad dreams. Room stretched wide, floored with linoleum tiles that squelched, gummy and rotten beneath his boots. The center of the room held.
Oh, come on.
Corey managed, voice barely more than a whimper. Overhead lights hummed, their pitch changing with his breathing, quickening, stinging every nerve. Stinger Flynn sat like the king of nightmares in the middle, a huge mass of translucent orange swaying and undulating, tendrils hanging, twitching, tipped with stingers that dripped strange liquid, multicolored, metallic, completely wrong. Like blood that's turned iridescent and decided to crawl.
Yo, chat.
Corey wheezed, stumbling against the wall. Jellyfish situation. His throat clenched as Flynn's body shivered. Under the membrane, a warped face pressed forward, eyes sunken, two holes leaking darkness, a lipless slit stretching far past where a mouth should stop. The tendrils snapped in sudden synchrony, tasting panic hanging in the air. A wet, meaty plop trembled through the room. One stinger detached, wriggling across the floor, trailing shiny mucus.
No,
Corey sidestepped, katana slicing down, tearing cleanly through, the tip kept squirming, needle end gnashing at his boots, worm-like and rabid. Flynn's shape darkened, membrane turning soupy, sick brown. The rest of his tendrils snapped rigid, stingers trembling and whining in a shrill, unnatural pitch. Corey's stomach flipped.
Oh, you pissed him off.
Another volley, stingers whipped past him, spearing into the wall, dripping black goo. Chat would have lost it, dodge God, and jelly boss fight? But Corey was too busy tumbling behind a smashed bookshelf as Flynn's laughter bubbled up, gurgling like water boiling with viscera in a clogged pipe. The bookshelf shook, splinters raining, as stingers punched through wood. Corey's fingers brushed cold metal, fire extinguisher, half buried under moldy, blood-smeared textbooks. He grinned, manic.
All right, Flynn, time for some bubbles.
A tentacle slammed Corey's shoulder, gelatinous and icy. A stinger plunged into his jacket, needle sharp, slicing flesh instantly. There wasn't time to scream. The world peeled apart. Colors inverted, blinding, insane. Sounds warped, twisted into screams stretched forever. Suddenly, there was nothing. Classroom gone, katana vanished, his own body dissolved. Just darkness, thick as tar. Suffocating. Corey gasped, but the air twisted away. No sound, not even his own. Fingers clawed at nothing. No texture, no hope, only crawling skin.
Chat.
He mouthed, empty words lost to the void. Silence here wasn't silent. It was ravenous, devouring every breath, every thought. Only his heartbeat let him know he hadn't disappeared. Movement. Something flickered, at the edges, barely real. Corey tried to turn. Could he turn here? And saw it, silhouette tall, grotesque, limbs bent at wrong angles, fingers drooping like melted wax, drifting closer. No face, only a perfectly smooth blank oval, tilted at him, curious. His stomach screamed run, but he had no feet, no hands, no limbs, nothing but trembling awareness, floating in horror. The silhouette drew near, its fingers whispering against the air where his cheek might have been. A sound trickled through, barely more than a thought. Not a voice, an idea etched into his bones. Alone? Darkness convulsed. Shapes bulged up from the black, a nightmare playground, metal frames split into bone and teeth, swing sets creaking without any wind, chains snarled into nooses. Corey tried to scream, but the void ate it hungrily. The faceless thing pressed its oval to where his forehead should have been. Cold. Wrong. And the dark hunched over him, growing heavier, hungrier, eager for one more lost soul in its kindergarten made of nightmares. Hey, it's Markiplier. Yeah, that Markiplier. I know, wild, right? Today I did something a little nuts. I went to check out the old, abandoned Freddy's Family Diner. And let me tell you, this place is next level creepy, like it's been marinating in decades of fear. The walls are sagging under the weight of old secrets, and every step I take kicks up clouds of dust that seem to swirl in patterns, almost like they're trying to spell out warnings. Right now, I'm standing in the middle of the restaurant. It's so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Honestly, I can hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. The second I walked in, I caught something in the corner of my eye, some kind of shadow slipping across the far wall, too quick and fluid to be a trick of the light. Then I noticed this dark, sticky trail snaking across the floor. It looked way too much like blood, thick and almost tar-like, and it led straight to the stage, right where those freaky animatronics are just sitting, frozen mid-performance, their plastic eyes staring into nothing. I was staring at them, trying to convince myself they're just hunks of metal and wires, just relics of a forgotten era. But then I swear, Chica moved her head. Just a tiny jerk, but enough to make my stomach flip. I nearly jumped out of my skin.
I'm just seeing things!
I said out loud, voice shaking a little, hoping if I said it enough, I'd believe it. The echo bounced back at me, warped by the emptiness. I kept going, poking around, flashlight beam trembling in my hand. The bathrooms? Total disaster. Rust everywhere, moss growing up the walls and sickly green veins, and the smell. I can't even describe it. It's like decades of rotting filth, sewage, and something else, something almost sweet. It almost made me throw up right there, and I had to cover my nose just to keep moving. That's when things got weird. I looked back at the stage. One of the animatronics was missing. Chica, the same one I thought I saw move. Where the hell did she go? The sticky trail was gone too, like someone had wiped it away, or maybe it just sank into the cracked tiles. Were these things programmed to wander around, or did some maniac leave them powered on all these years? My mind raced with urban legends and stories I'd heard about this place. Before I could figure it out, there was this huge crash from the kitchen. I spun around, hard hammering, and now Freddy and Bonnie were gone too. My stomach dropped like a stone, and suddenly every shadow seemed to stretch a little bit closer. I crept toward the kitchen, every instinct screaming at me to get out, but curiosity won. I couldn't help it. I needed to know what was happening. The kitchen door was hanging open, and flickering lights spilled out in pulses. And there she was, Chica, hunched over something on the floor. She was eating it. And it looked horribly, unmistakably human. The grinding, crunching sounds, metal jaws tearing into old flesh, echoed in the tiled room, almost drowning out my own ragged breathing. I started backing up, slow, trying not to make a sound, but then I bumped into something behind me. I turned, hard in my throat, and found myself face to face with Freddy and Bonnie. Their eyes flared with a dull, red light. My fear twisted into something else. A smile stretched across my face, too wide, too unnatural, pulling at the corners of my mouth until it hurt. Laughter bubbled up, but it wasn't really mine. It was darker, deeper, like something else was crawling out of my chest. The animatronics stared at me, confusion flickering in their mechanical faces. Then I let the mask drop. The shadows curled around me, swirling like living smoke. My eyes turned into empty black voids that seemed to suck in all the light. I was never really Markiplier. I was Darkiplier all along, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment. I lunged at Freddy, grabbing his head in my hands and melting it down with nothing but my touch, the metal warping and sloughing away like wax. Chica shrieked, a sound that rattled the broken glass in the windows, tried to run, but I blasted her into scrap with a surge of dark energy that tore her apart in seconds. Bonnie started babbling, desperate, his voice glitching between static and a child's pleading.
Wait, I'm just a ghost kid possessing this robot.
He sounded terrified, like he could feel the end closing in. I just grinned wider, impossibly wide, my mouth splitting open like a nightmare, and told him,
Doesn't matter.
My laughter echoed through the empty halls, pure nightmare fuel, bouncing off every decaying surface. I punched right through his metal shell, tearing him apart piece by piece until there was nothing left but twisted wires and shattered dreams. Satisfied, I headed for the exit, feeling the darkness recede just a little. That's when I spotted a newspaper on the floor, yellowed and torn. Freddy's Mega Pizzaplex now open. The headline seemed to pulse in the gloom, a warning and a promise. Guess the nightmare's just getting started. Unlike Freddy's Family Diner, this place was wide open. No locked doors, no security, just an open invitation to disaster. Anyone could walk right in, and from the looks of it, half the city already had. People streamed through the doors in a constant flow, laughter and bright chatter echoing off the high ceilings. Most of them had no clue what was about to hit them. They were blissfully unaware, faces glowing in the neon lights, not even glancing over their shoulders as they pushed deeper into the crowd. All the while, Darkoplier just stood near the entrance, smiling that chilling, predatory grin that always seemed to suck the warmth out of the room. He let out a low, wicked laugh, one that seemed to vibrate beneath your skin, setting your nerves on edge. Bingo! He muttered, as if he'd just won something priceless. He scanned the bustling room and quickly spotted a kid lingering anxiously near the entrance, probably waiting for someone. With a smooth, calculated swagger, Darkoplier sauntered over, every movement oozing false friendliness.
Hey kiddo, which way's the stage?
He asked, his voice syrupy sweet, but with a dangerous undertone. The kid, maybe 8 or 9, shrank back, eyes wide as saucers, and just pointed a trembling finger down the hall without saying a word. Darkoplier leaned in closer, his smile stretching unnaturally wide, voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the noise.
You can run now.
The kid didn't need a second warning. He tore off down the hall, sneakers squeaking against the polished floor, vanishing into the sea of people. Darkoplier watched him go for a moment, then turned his attention to the main atrium, where the crowd was packed shoulder to shoulder, everyone jostling for a better view of the stage. He paused, taking it all in, the laughter, the shouting, the endless energy and life. He couldn't help but feel more than a little pleased with himself.
So many souls in one place.
He whispered, the words curling out like smoke.
It would be a shame if something happened to all of them.
His voice grew even lower, almost a growl, as if he was winding himself up, getting ready for the carnage to come. The truth was, Darkoplier was evil in a way that defied understanding, a cold, calculating malice that cared nothing for anyone, not even himself. He was unbound by morals, loyalty, or even self-preservation. If he ever answered to anyone, it was only as a means to his own ends, a stepping stone to greater chaos. He lifted his voice above the noise, dark eyes sweeping over the throng.
Oh, Freddy, where are you?
He called out, the words slicing through the chatter like a knife. Instantly, the mood shifted. People froze mid-step, conversations died, and a hush fell over the crowd. Some recognized the name with dread, others looked around in confusion. One little kid, no older than 5, took one look at Darkoplier and wet himself on the spot, face crumpling in terror. A drunk guy, maybe trying to lighten the mood or just too far gone to care, yelled out.
He's just an animatronic, you drunk idiot.
His voice was half laugh, half torn, but he had no idea what he just unleashed. Darkoplier's smile vanished in an instant, his eyes hardening into something cold and merciless. He turned to face the man, every movement deliberate and slow, and the guy's confidence evaporated.
No, I was just kidding.
He stammered, hands raised in a useless defense. But Darkoplier didn't care. He grabbed the man by the head, twisting it all the way around with a horrifying crunch, then yanked it clean off. The sound echoed, sickening and final. Screams erupted from the crowd, panic spreading like wildfire. A family huddled together, sobbing, clutching each other as chaos exploded around them. Darkoplier roared over the cacophony, voice booming and furious.
Shut up! You'll get your turn.
He stomped toward the stage, eyes burning with anticipation, ready to take things to the next level. There on the stage, the glam rock animatronics stood assembled in the glare of the spotlights. Freddy Fazbear, Glamrock Chica, Roxanne Wolf, and Montgomery Gator. Freddy stepped forward, fists clenched, voice trembling with fury.
How could you kill that person?
He demanded, anger and disbelief mingling in his robotic tone. There was no more time for talking. The fight exploded in a blur of violence. Roxy lunged first, razor-sharp claws flashing in the lights. But Darkoplier just laughed, sidestepping easily. He had claws of his own, long, black, and wickedly sharp. He tore into her, shredding her synthetic flesh and metal chassis, ripped off her arms, and kept going, reducing her to a pile of sparking debris and twisted metal. The crowd watched in horror as one of their beloved animatronics was obliterated in seconds. Somewhere nearby, a little girl started screaming, inconsolable. Roxy had been her favorite. Darkoplier's eyes flicked to her, his face twisting with annoyance. Without hesitation, he raised a hand and blasted her head off with a burst of shadowy energy. Her parents collapsed next to her, racked with sobs, their world shattered in an instant.
You monster. She was just a kid.
Freddy roared, his voice nearly breaking. Darkoplier just shrugged, utterly indifferent.
Yeah, but I have souls to collect.
Chica and Monty charged him together, desperate and furious. But he caught them both mid-leap and smashed their heads together like ragdolls. Sparks flew as he hammered them repeatedly against the ground, stomping, jumping, and kicking until nothing remained but broken, twitching parts and a pool of oil. Freddy staggered back, horror etched into his metallic face as he called out for his friends. But then, from deep within, he summoned a burst of courage and rage, charging at Darkoplier with everything he had. Darkoplier just laughed, caught him mid-run, and set Freddy ablaze with a wave of his hand. The flames twisted and danced up Freddy's body, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. Some people swore they heard the fire itself laughing, echoing Darkoplier's madness. With a wicked, satisfied grin, Darkoplier turned to the remaining crowd.
Alright, now it's your turn.
He snapped his fingers, and in an instant, the entire building detonated in a colossal explosion. Walls caved in, glass shattered, and everyone inside was wiped out in a blinding flash of light and heat. When the smoke finally cleared, Darkoplier stepped out of the smoldering ruins, still laughing that horrible, echoing laugh that seemed to linger in the air even after he stopped. His skin was scorched and battered, but he didn't care. All he needed now were a few more souls to complete his plan. Something ancient and unspeakably terrifying, a demon so powerful it could erase the world itself. And as he looked out over the burning city, he knew with certainty, he was only just getting started. After Darkoplier detonated Freddy's Mega Pizzaplex and annihilated everyone inside, he paused, letting the dust settle, and realized he'd overlooked something crucial. A hidden basement, unexplored and untouched. That nagging sense of unfinished business gnawed at him, so he doubled back through the twisted, smoking wreckage. The place was a shattered ruin, charred carpeting and splintered metal everywhere, but he found the stairs, half collapsed but still leading down, spiraling into darkness. The air underground was heavy, thick with the stench of burnt plastic and ozone. As he crept deeper, echoes drifted through the concrete corridors. Children's laughter, high and fleeting, tangled with faint, shuddering sobs. The spectral noise barely registered for Darkoplier. He was a demon, after all, Such haunted voices only confirmed he was heading in the right direction, toward the heart of all that was lost and forgotten down here. He soon reached Roxy Raceway. The neon lights were smashed, and oil pooled across the floor. At the far end, a rusted metal door waited, the next threshold to even deeper levels. Just as Darkoplier reached for the handle, an enormous shadow slid across the wall behind him. The ground trembled. DJ Music Man, towering and monstrous, lurked in the gloom. The animatronic speakers crackled, his voice booming and metallic, echoing with a warning.
You shouldn't be here.
Darkoplier only smirked, flashing teeth.
I'm here for the souls I've missed,
he replied, his voice like oil and knives. Without hesitation, he raised a hand and hurled a blast of roiling dark energy straight at DJ Music Man's chest. The impact sent sparks flying, but the attack only made the animatronic furious. DJ Music Man surged forward with a roar, arms swinging like wrecking balls. He crashed into Darkoplier, pinning him to the ground, then stomped and crushed, metal limbs smashing bones and splattering blood across the tiles. The obliteration was brutal, but after a minute of mechanical rage, something strange happened. Darkoplier started to laugh, a sound twisted and echoing. Bones cracked and realigned, flesh knitting itself back together, blood crawling back into his veins. He stood up, perfectly healed, eyes burning.
Is that all you got?
He taunted, voice mocking. For the first time, DJ Music Man hesitated. The animatronic's eyes flickered with something like fear. Before he could react, Darkoplier was already behind him, claws digging deep into metal plating, ripping and tearing until he wrenched the robot's head free with a shriek of tortured steel. The Guardian toppled, sparks guttering out. With nothing left to block his path, Darkoplier pressed onward, deeper into the labyrinth. The darkness seemed alive, filled with strange noises, voices whispering, metal scraping, the ghostly patter of feet that never reached him. Every sense sharpened. He knew something, or someone, still lingered in these depths, clinging to what remained of their existence. He found a room that could have been ripped from the most depraved corner of a FNAF-themed hentai. A bizarre, adult playroom, festooned with all manner of sex toys and paraphernalia. The walls were lined with racks of rubber and leather, the air thick with an unplaceable musk. Darkoplier picked up a dildo, sniffed it with a thoughtful grin.
They're close,
he murmured, his voice curling into the gloom, certain that the traces of life, desire, fear, pleasure, were strong here. He didn't bother to question why such a room existed, buried under layers of ruin and security. Some mysteries, he figured, were better left unsolved in places like this. With a careless flick, he tossed the filthy toy aside and carried on, his footsteps echoing in the silent corridors. Deeper still, a piercing scream shattered the quiet. Instantly alert, Darkoplier followed the sound, weaving through tangled wires and shattered animatronic shells, until he stumbled upon a grotesque tableau. An endoskeleton robot, its movements jerky and unnatural, was mimicking every gesture of a naked girl standing before it, like some obscene, mechanical puppet master. The girl's eyes were wild, her skin slick with sweat, trapped in a private hell.
Hey! She's mine to collect.
Darkoplier barked at the mimic, his patience gone. With a snarl, he lunged, claws glowing with dark energy, tearing into the robot's frame. Metal shrieked and sparks flew as he dismantled the mimic, piece by piece, until its remains lay scattered and useless on the floor. The girl, chest heaving, managed to look up at him, gratitude and terror warring in her wide eyes.
Thanks for saving me. I just wanted to have some fun before that thing found me.
She was still dripping, her voice trembling with relief and lingering fear. Darkoplier shrugged, expression unreadable.
I didn't come to save you.
The words hit her like a slap. Fear spread across her face, raw and immediate.
Let me help you with that,
he said, his tone cold. He thrust his hand into her, and in an instant, her body convulsed, energy crackling as she was vaporized from the inside out, her soul torn away and absorbed.
Looks like I've got all the souls now.
Darkoplier muttered to himself, feeling the surge of power. He raised both hands, channeling the dark energy that now brimmed within him, and unleashed a blast so vast and furious it obliterated the entire state in a heartbeat, the shockwave killing every living thing without warning. The sheer force of the explosion ripped his legs from his body and hurled him through the air, launching him into the next state over. It didn't matter, pain was nothing to him. His legs regrew, bones and muscle reforming in seconds. Just as he brushed the dust off, his phone buzzed, a call from the government. On the other end, a voice, clinical and cold, reported,
"The resurrection is 100% complete."
Darkoplier's lips curled into a grin, voice low and sharp, full of promise and threat.
My name's Ash Curry, and right now, I'm about to cross the threshold into this abandoned toy factory, a place swallowed by shadows and rot, where even the air feels wrong, thick with secrets and something else I can't name. The instant I step inside, silence clamps down like icy hands around my throat. The quiet isn't just quiet, it's suffocating, almost predatory, as if the building itself is holding its breath, waiting for me to make a sound. There's a faded, grime-caked sign overhead, Playtime Company. The letters are chipped and smeared with what might be rust, or something darker. Whatever hope I had for a welcoming atmosphere evaporates. Every step echoes too loudly, bouncing off peeling walls and shattered glass. I stumble into a heavy steel door, its keypad stripped of numbers, just a set of colored buttons, each slick and sticky, as though recently touched by something not quite human. A clue has to be lurking somewhere. I wander deeper, every nerve set to snap. In the next room, an old toy train sits on a warped track, each car painted a garish color, green, pink, yellow, red. The paint's smeared, almost as if it was slathered on with frantic hands.
That's gotta be the code.
I mutter, voice trembling. Back at the keypad, my fingers are trembling as I punch in the colors, green, pink, yellow, red. The lock gives a sickly metallic click, a sound that makes my skin crawl. I hold my breath and push the door open. The hinges screeching like a wounded animal. Inside, a battered VHS tape lies abandoned. I shove it into the ancient VCR, and the screen shudders to life. Static and flickering images dance across the glass, a training video, but warped, distorted, almost mocking. It shows a grab pack, the arms jerking and twisting with unnatural fluidity, like something alive. When it ends, the glass door slides open with a hiss, and there it is, the grab pack itself, resting on a blood-stained table. Strapping it on, my hands fumble. The plastic feels cold, almost clammy, and the straps dig into my wrists like manacles. I stumble out, the grab packs mechanical were echoing in the emptiness. The next door looms before me, marked with a blue handprint, too large, too inhuman. I aim, the grab pack's blue hand shooting out with a snap. The door unlocks, groaning open like it's in pain. The next room paralyzes me. In the center, towering over everything, is a grotesque blue thing, a mountain of matted fur and empty, soulless eyes. It's posed like a statue, but there's something off, something viscerally wrong. The sign at its feet reads, Huggy Wuggy.
His name is Huggy, Huggy Wuggy. When he hugs you, he'll never stop. Your friend Huggy, Huggy Wuggy. He'll squeeze you until you pop.
The name is scrawled in a child's handwriting, but smeared with what looks like old, dried blood. The room branches off in every direction. I try the blue hand again, but the panel sputters and pops, blue sparks fizzing out. That's when I hear it, the chilling jingle of keys. I spin, heart pounding. Huggy's arm has moved, a heavy brass key dangling from its clawed grip. Did it move? Was it always like that? My mind reels, unspooling with terror. My bladder betrays me, and I'm not even ashamed. I snatch the key with the grab pack, yanking it from Huggy's grasp, and run for the power room, footsteps splashing through pools I don't care to identify. I fumble with the controls, hands slick with sweat and something stickier. The lights flicker, sputtering to life. I race back, but Huggy is gone. Not just gone, vanished, as if it melted into the walls. The spot where it stood is smeared with thick, greasy stains. I scream, raw, primal, desperate.
Where did it go? Was that thing alive?
My voice cracks, barely a whisper, swallowed by the oppressive dark. I stagger to the front doors, but they're bolted tight, covered in deep scratches and splatters of red. Panic claws at my insides, tearing at my sanity. I'm shaking so hard I nearly collapse in the sticky puddles pooling around my feet. I force myself forward, every step a battle. The halls are littered with broken toys, their plastic limbs twisted, their faces gouged and smeared with blood. Some have been arranged in grotesque tableaus, tiny hands reaching for help that will never come. Deeper in, I find another grab pack hand, this one, a glossy, crimson red, the color of fresh arterial spray. I snap it on, the mechanism grinding and whirring. Ahead, a door looms, marked with both blue and red handprints, like the fingerprints of a monster. I hit both sensors, the door groans open. Now I'm crawling through vents, the metal slick and cold beneath me. The conveyor belts rattle and groan, echoing with sounds that don't belong, scratching, whispering, a low, wet giggle. It feels endless, a claustrophobic nightmare. I drop at last into a cavernous chamber, filled with machines that blink and shudder. Each one is topped with a plastic head, eyes rolling and twitching, mouths frozen in silent screams. A huge sign leers down, "Make a friend." But the letters are warped, dripping with crimson. This is where they built the toys, and maybe where they tore them apart. I force myself to approach, desperate for some kind of comfort. I cobble together a companion, Cat B, a yellow Cat B hybrid, its stitched smile uneven, eyes too wide. For a fleeting second, I feel the barest flicker of hope. I place Cat B on the device in front of the door. The machine whirs, then snaps, and Cat B is sucked away, vanishing with a pitiful squeal.
No Cat B!
I scream, my voice ragged, watching my only friend disappear into the machine's hungry maw. Tears sting my eyes as I stumble onward. The hallway ahead pulses with red light, the shadows crawling. Just as I reach the next room, a monstrous shape erupts from the darkness, Huggy Wuggy, its fur matted red, jaws distended, rows of jagged teeth glinting with gore. I run, heart beating like a war drum. The vents twist in impossible directions, walls closing in. Around every corner, I expect to feel claws ripping at my back. Huggy's breath is hot on my neck, a rotten stench filling the air. I burst into a vast chamber, catwalks zigzagging over an abyss so deep I can't see the bottom. The blackness below swallows all sound, all hope. Huggy smashes through the door, mouth gaping. I swing the grab pack, knocking a heavy crate from above. It crashes down, splintering the catwalk. Huggy's scream is inhuman, a wail of rage and hunger, as it plunges into the pit, swallowed by darkness. I collapse, shaking, sure I was about to be torn apart. Blood smears my palms. For a moment, I can't move.
What now?
I rasp, voice shredded, mind unraveling. In the center of the factory, a door waits, painted with a gigantic, blood-red poppy. I stumble forward, the air thick with the smell of flowers and decay. I push through, suddenly finding myself in a room that looks like a warped parody of a home, yellow wallpaper crawling with poppy motifs, furniture draped in dust and shadow. Another door stands ajar. Inside, a glass case sits at the far end, a single doll inside, Poppy, her porcelain face cracked, eyes too bright, watching me. I can't stop myself. I open the case. Poppy's eyelids snap open, and she fixes me with a stare that pierces my soul.
You opened my case.
Poppy whispers, her voice a razor across my mind. The lights die, plunging me into utter blackness. I feel something cold and wet brush against my ankle. The darkness isn't empty, it's alive. And it's hungry. After Ash opened Poppy's glass case and set her free, a chill swept through the room. Poppy stood alone for a split second in the crushing darkness, her tiny figure swallowed by the shadows. The lights stuttered, flickering back on with a harsh, electric buzz, but Poppy was gone. The silence that followed felt alive, heavy, and hungry. Ash, still dripping with shame, her pants soaked in piss, the stench sharp and humiliating, stumbled down the hallway. The walls seemed to pulse with secrets, and every step echoed like a warning. That's when she noticed a door. Elliot Ludwig, it read, the name scrawled in faded, blood-red letters. She hesitated, heart pounding, then pushed it open. The darkness inside seemed to breathe. And there, perched innocently on an old, creaking desk, was Poppy. Her perfect porcelain face gleamed in the half-light, eyes wide and glassy, lips curled into a smile that was almost too perfect.
So scared she put me back in that case. But you saved me. You are perfect. Too perfect to lose. I'm sorry. I can't let you leave. I've never met anyone like you. Do you know how long I've been stuck in that case? Well, too long. I had so much time to think and reflect. Time to figure out exactly what I would do when free. I'll set things right. Terrible things have happened. But I know that whatever I need you to do, you are capable.
Poppy whispered, her voice so soft it felt like it was coming from inside Ash's own head. Ash recoiled, her nerves stretched raw.
I don't want to know.
She snapped, but the words sounded hollow, like a lie she desperately wanted to believe. Poppy leaned in, her tiny hands trembling. She began to spill everything, the secrets that festered in the factory's walls. She told Ash about the children, how they were taken, twisted, and remade into toys by hands that should have cared for them. The images burned in Ash's mind, little faces screaming as their bodies were warped into plastic and stuffing, blood soaking the assembly lines. Then came the hour of joy, the moment when the toys, driven mad by pain and betrayal, snapped. They turned on their creators, painted the factory red with vengeance. Screams, splintered limbs, and rivers of blood. The air had been thick with terror and a coppery stench of death. As Poppy spoke, I felt my stomach twist with nausea, my skin crawling.
That's horrible.
Ash spat, her fear sharpening into fury. Her fists clenched, knuckles white. But Poppy wasn't finished. Her voice cracked as she spoke of the prototype, the one who ruled over the broken toys like a nightmare king.
If we don't stop him,
She whispered,
the orphans, all those lost children, will be trapped as toys forever.
Tears glittered in her glass eyes, each one reflecting a universe of misery. Then, suddenly, her voice rose into a shriek.
I want to fucking kill him!
The rage in her words was inhuman, chilling. That was the moment it all became real. There was no way out, the horror was just beginning. Ash didn't hesitate. She let Poppy climb onto her shoulder, the little doll clinging to her like a parasite. Together, they crept down the corridor, every shadow twisting into a grinning maw, every toy staring with hollow, accusing eyes. Soon, they reached a gaping pit in the floor. The blackness below seemed bottomless, a silent promise of death. Before they could react, a grotesque pink arm, fleshy, oozing, impossibly long, shot out from the dark, fingers like claws. It grabbed us, its grip cold and wet, and yanked us down into the abyss. The world spun, screams echoing off the walls, and then we crashed to the concrete below. That's when we saw her, the one who had dragged us down. Mommy Long Legs. Her plastic smile was stretched way too wide, her eyes wild, hair matted with something dark. Blood? Her voice rang out, lilting and cracked, always talking in third person, always hungry for pain. Ash stood her ground. Mommy's arms whipped out, bones cracking, flesh tearing. Ash, running on pure terror and adrenaline, dodged the blows and grabbed one of those rubbery limbs. With a sickening snap, she tore it clean off. Mommy Long Legs shrieked, blood spraying, the sound burrowing deep into our bones. We'd landed smack in the middle of the game station, a haunted carnival of broken rides, flickering lights, and the smell of rot. Poppy's voice trembled.
We need the train code to go deeper.
she said, but her eyes never left the shadows. As we fought Mommy Long Legs, the air became thick with gore. Her body twisted, leaking black ichor, until at last, battered and broken, she wheezed out the code. Ash and Poppy scrambled onto the train, its engine howling like a dying animal. The ride plunged them deeper into the factory's guts, past shattered dolls and blood-stained walls, all the way to Playcare, a place where the screams of children still lingered. The truth was clear, written in blood and fear, this was only the beginning. The real nightmare, the hunt for the prototype, and the rescue of those haunted, broken children, was just getting started. The factory was alive, and it didn't want to let us go. Ash and Poppy finally made it to the Playcare, a place buried deep in the heart of the haunted toy factory, where the shadows seemed to breathe and every echo sounded like a distant scream. The air was thick with the scent of old plastic and something far fouler, something that reeked of lost childhoods and broken dreams.
We have to pick up a friend first.
Poppy said, her lips curling into that porcelain doll smile, too wide, too perfect, eyes glassy and unblinking, as if she were savoring a secret only she and the darkness shared. With a lightness that didn't match the gloom, Poppy climbed onto my shoulder, her tiny fingers cold as ice against my skin, and pointed the way to home sweet home. That was the orphanage wing, where laughter used to fill the halls, before they twisted every child into something monstrous, trapping their souls inside hollow, grinning toys. We crept inside. The place was a slaughterhouse, walls streaked with dried blood, sticky and black in the flickering light, shattered toys lying in pieces, their limbs bent at impossible angles and faces frozen in silent screams. It felt like the walls themselves watched us, hungry for new victims. Still, we pressed forward, hearts pounding, and found the room Poppy was searching for. Kissy Missy sat on a sagging, stained bed, her plush form slumped, staring blankly at a faded photograph clutched in her limp hand, a photo of a little girl, smiling, now just a ghost.
Kissy!
Poppy called out, leaping from my shoulder to throw her arms around her friend.
I missed you,
she whispered, her voice trembling with something like relief, or maybe desperation. Kissy Missy couldn't speak, her mouth was stitched shut, but Poppy seemed to understand her all the same, like they shared some silent, psychic bond forged in horror and pain.
Let's go kill the prototype,
Poppy said, her voice chillingly casual, as if she were suggesting a game instead of murder. We turned to leave, but then a sudden hiss filled the hall, and thick red gas began to pour from cracks in the walls, swirling around our feet. Through the dense mist, I glimpsed something enormous and feline, its eyes smoldering like coals, a monstrous cat, prowling in the blood haze.
Run!
Poppy shrieked, her voice cracking with terror. We bolted, racing towards the gas production zone, but the fumes clawed at our lungs, burning and suffocating, smothering my mind in darkness. My legs buckled. I collapsed, the world going black before I could reach the door. When I awoke, I was slumped in a desk in a classroom, the air stifling, oppressive. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long, twitching shadows that seemed to reach for us. Poppy and Kissy Missy were next to me, dazed but alive. The walls were covered in childish drawings, but every smile was twisted, every sun bled crimson, and stick figures hung from trees. Then Miss Delight entered, a teacher once meant to nurture children, now a twisted parody of care, her face stretched into a grotesque grin, eyes glinting with sadistic joy.
Looks like we've got some very naughty students,
she purred, her voice a razor blade dipped in honey. Catnap sent her, she said, to keep us trapped. Her laugh was jagged, cracking, as if something inside her was breaking loose.
Don't think you'll mess with our plans,
she sneered, her gaze boring into me, into my soul. Miss Delight left the room, but the door didn't lock.
Now's our chance,
I hissed, heart hammering, gesturing frantically at the exit. We grabbed whatever weapons we could find. Poppy snatched a rusty nail, sharp as a needle and caked with something dark. I found a butcher's knife, heavy and cold, its blade stained and not just with rust. Kissy Missy hefted a splintered plank, nails jutting from its end like fangs. We crept toward the door, every step torture, the floorboards creaking like dying voices. But Miss Delight was waiting, her smile wider than ever, teeth gleaming as she blocked our escape.
You really thought you could escape?
she spat, voice twisted with glee.
And I was just starting to have fun.
Her hand darted behind her back and she produced a chainsaw, its roar splitting the air, drowning out our screams. In a spray of blood, she swung it at Kissy Missy. The blade tore through flesh and flesh alike, severing Kissy's right arm. Blood and stuffing exploded across the room, painting the walls in fresh horror.
Kissy!
Poppy screamed, voice raw with agony. I lunged at Miss Delight, gripping the knife with shaking hands, and hurled it at her. Time slowed, the blade spun, glinting in the sickly light, and struck her squarely in the skull. Blood jetted from the wound. Her body crumpled, chainsaw clattering to the floor with a sickening thud.
Wow, I can't believe that worked.
I gasped, breath ragged, every nerve alight with terror and adrenaline. Poppy didn't hesitate.
This way!
She cried, her porcelain face smeared with blood. We tore through the hallways, heading for the gas production zone, but Catnap was waiting, his monstrous silhouette filling the passage, eyes burning with hatred and hunger.
You should have left.
He growled, his voice echoing with malice and something ancient, something that hungered for suffering. Before we could move, his claws closed around us, iron strong. He dragged us, thrashing and screaming, to a massive hatch in the floor.
The prototype will handle you.
Catnap hissed, his breath hot and foul. With a single heave, he hurled us down into the darkness below, the hatch slamming shut above us with a booming finality. Now we're trapped in the abyss, the walls closing in, shadows writhing, the stench of blood and fear suffocating. Is this how it ends for us? Or do we have even the faintest hope of clawing our way out of this nightmare, or will we become just another set of haunted toys, lost and screaming in the endless dark? After Catnap flung Ash, Poppy, and Kissy down the gaping, lightless pit, I was certain we wouldn't survive the bone-shattering drop. But somehow, by some twisted miracle, we landed on a mountain of discarded flesh and broken plastic, our bodies battered but alive. The air down here was thick and wet, stinking of burnt fur and old blood. And as we dragged ourselves up, I realized we were getting closer to the prototype, the heart of this nightmare.
Poppy, are you okay?
I croaked, voice echoing in the cavernous dark. She nodded, but her eyes looked haunted, glassy, reflecting the flickering emergency lights above. I scooped up her doll frame and perched her on my shoulder. Her little arms clung to my neck. I told her she looked adorable, like the kind of cursed toy you'd see in a haunted antique store. Truthfully, I'd always wanted a Poppy doll, before I knew the truth about this place. She giggled, a nervous, hollow sound that bounced off the factory walls. We kept moving, deeper into the belly of this accursed toy factory, the place where orphaned kids are chewed up and spat out as monstrous playthings. Every surface was smeared with grime, dusty with forgotten memories and sticky with something far worse. Poppy whispered that there were other good toys out there, ones who remembered being human, ones who still had a soul. She said we were heading for a place called Safe Haven, a sanctuary for toys who refused to become monsters. Kissy, our big, pink, huggable monster friend, suddenly tensed, her stitched lips curling back to reveal rows of needle teeth. She hissed at something unseen, a shape slithered just beyond the edge of the flashlight's beam. Oddly enough, with my freakish companion stalking beside me, I actually felt safer here, in this hellhole, than out in the open. Eventually, we stumbled across a rusty train car, its windows smeared with what looked unmistakably like blood. It would take us to the prison, the part of the factory where they used to lock up bad toys, before the hour of joy. That was the night the toys revolted. That was when the screaming started, and the real bloodbath began. We clambered aboard, and the moment the door slammed shut, a battered TV fizzed to life in the corner. Static gave way to a single, enormous eyeball, staring right at us. The doctor's voice oozed through the speakers, cold and warped.
Well now, this is an interesting turn of events.
Poppy's face twisted with rage.
What the hell do you want?
She spat, her voice shaking with old pain. She hated the doctor more than anything. He was one of the ones who'd turned children into these nightmares, who'd made them scream and beg and break. But now, he was just a ghost in the machine, a digital monster, uploaded by the very people who'd once worked beside him, desperate to be rid of his cruelty but unable to truly kill him. The train screeched to a halt at the prison.
Come on. We're almost there.
Poppy whispered, her voice barely audible over the grinding metal. As we stepped off, the shadows thickened, and suddenly, a horde of toys shambled from the darkness, every one of them mutilated, stitched together from the corpses of children and the scraps of discarded plush.
Where do you think you're going?
Came a voice like rusty nails. Freaky Freddy, a monstrous parody of Freddy Fazbear, lurched forward, his fur matted with dried blood and one glass eye hanging by a wire.
Hey now, no need to be scared. How about I make you laugh forever?
Cackled a clown toy, Crazy the Clown, his painted smile splitting his face in half, exposing rotten gums and splintered teeth.
Ew, gross, I can barely look at that thing.
I muttered, bile rising in my throat.
Don't worry.
Poppy said, though her own voice trembled. My hand shot to the knife I kept for emergencies, and I slashed at the clown's outstretched arm, slicing off a 3-fingered hand in a spray of stuffing and black, reeking blood.
That's not very nice. How about a good laugh while I rip your limbs off?
Crazy the Clown shrieked, lunging at me, jaws unhinging in a way that defied nature, ready to swallow me whole. His clammy fingers closed around my throat, but before he could bite, Kissy barreled into him, jaws snapping shut on his head. With a sickening crunch, she tore the clown's jaw clean off, sending it skittering across the filthy floor. The rest of the mutilated toys swarmed us, their screams a cacophony of agony and rage. We fought like animals in the dark, blood and stuffing flying in every direction. But there were too many, dozens, maybe hundreds, each one more twisted than the last. In the chaos, I spotted a switch on the far wall, half hidden by dangling wires and torn posters. I grabbed Poppy, her tiny body trembling in my grip, and hurled her over the mob. She landed, rolled, and yanked the switch. With a thunderous roar, the floor dropped out from under the monsters, and they plunged into a grinding pit of whirring blades. The screams that followed were inhuman, shrill, desperate, then mercifully silenced as blood sprayed up through the cracks. I snatched up Poppy and we ran, the smell of burning stuffing and blood clinging to our skin. The closer we got to safe haven, the stronger the stench of smoke and char grew. When we arrived, our last hope was already gone, safe haven was in flames, the charred remains of toys slumped in the ashes. Doughy the Doman, our friend and protector, was nowhere to be found.
No!
Poppy sobbed, her voice just a ghost of a sound.
We have to keep moving. We'll avenge them.
I promised, the words tasting like ash. We wandered through endless halls, each one more warped and bloodstained than the last, until at last we reached the doctor's lair. The walls were lined with blinking computers and monitors, all displaying twisted images of children and toys, agony looped on repeat. In the center of the room, a grotesque brain floated in a glass jar, pulsing and twitching as cables snaked out from its base. Robots burst in, eyes glowing, metal claws slick with something red.
Well now, looks like you made it.
The doctor purred, his voice echoing from every speaker.
Wait, is he controlling these things with his mind?
I asked, dread filling my stomach.
Indeed. I can control everything in this factory, from the security cameras to these delightful machines.
The doctor replied, smug and inhuman. Poppy screamed.
What happened to Safe Haven?
The prototype? He butchered every last toy and burned Safe Haven to the ground.
The doctor said, almost sounding pleased.
I'll help you destroy the prototype, but you'll have to survive first.
He led us to the labs, where the prototype was rumored to be hiding. As soon as we crossed the threshold, alarms screamed, and the door slammed shut, locking us in with the stench of death and chemicals. From the shadows, a familiar shape emerged, Huggy Wuggy. I thought I'd killed him before, sent him plummeting off the catwalks, but now he was back, stitches bursting, blue fur matted with blood, eyes wild with hate. He slammed his fists against the door, howling for blood. Our luck had finally run dry. Huggy was coming, and there was nowhere left to run. Whatever happened next, this was it, the end of the line, the last stand in this haunted factory. We had to face the prototype now, or die screaming in the dark, Just another story for the next unlucky soul who wandered into this place. We'd plunged even deeper into the haunted, forsaken heart of this monstrous toy factory. Ash, Poppy, Kissy Missy, and the doctor, who now existed only as a mind piloting one of his own mechanical abominations, his flesh long gone, perhaps torn away by the very nightmares he once created. We found ourselves face to face with Huggy Wuggy, a towering beast of blue fur and snapping teeth, pounding relentlessly at the lab door. Every blow shook the walls, echoing with the promise of blood. His eyes glinted with a mindless hunger, desperate to break through and devour us, to tear us limb from limb and feast on our terror. The instant Huggy smashed through, splinters spraying like shrapnel, a door across the lab yawned open as if beckoning us into a new layer of hell. We bolted, every footstep a frantic beat in a chase we could never win. Huggy's monstrous shadow crawled up the walls behind us, his breath hot and fetid at our backs. Poppy, a delicate porcelain doll cursed with glassy, lifelike eyes, began to sob, her tiny voice fracturing the thick darkness. She perched on my shoulder, her trembling hands clutching at my hair, so I snatched her up, pressed my lips to her icy forehead, and whispered frantic promises I barely believed, that we would survive, that she would be safe, that I would adopt her as my own if we made it out of this nightmare. Her tears tasted like salt and dust. We ran for what felt like an eternity, the hallways twisting, the shadows lengthening, the whole place breathing with a malignant life. At last, the doctor wrenched open another door, his robot frame screeching, and barked.
Quick, in here.
Once inside, gasping for air, he told us about a hidden city buried deep beneath the factory, a city built for toys, or perhaps for monsters. To get there, we'd have to cross something called Sweet Street and take the last train down. Poppy stared at him, her face frozen in shock. She'd never heard of this city, this underground kingdom, this secret world the prototype was building out of madness and mutilation. But now, at least, we had a plan. We would finish this, even if it meant facing the prototype in the abyss itself. We ran straight for Sweet Street, the air thickening with the scent of rotting sugar and old plastic. That's when reality fractured. A toy named Lily Lovebraid.
Oh my goodness! I don't think they're here for the party, Lily. Well, of course they are, Candy. Why else would they be here? We are going to have so much fun!
Her hair a writhing nest of purple tendrils, like some deranged, infantile Doc Ock, lunged out of the shadows. Her eyes were wide and empty. She snatched Poppy with too many hands and dragged her, screaming, into a grotesque toy house that loomed from the darkness like a mausoleum for broken dolls.
Leave her. We don't have time for this.
The doctor snapped, his voice metallic and cold. Kissy Missy bared her teeth at him, a low animal growl rumbling in her chest.
No way. I'm not leaving anyone behind.
I shot back, my voice shaking. Me and Kissy barreled after them, smashing the toy house door off its hinges. Inside, Poppy sat trembling at a cracked table, now dressed in a frilly pink dress that looked stitched from flesh. Lily sat across from her, silent and staring, her hair coiling around the table legs. We crept closer, every instinct screaming that we should run. I yelled,
"Get away from her, you creep!"
The doctor stormed in, his robotic arms whirring, and sliced Lily clean in half with a spray of stuffing and something darker, stickier. Her hair fell to the floor in a purple, writhing heap.
This is how you handle toys around here.
He spat, tearing the hair from her corpse.
Move. We have to keep moving.
I scooped up Poppy, her body shuddering, and we fled into the next nightmare. We dashed through endless, blood-splattered labs, the walls lined with dismembered dolls, until we finally reached the train station.
We're close now,
said the doctor, his voice echoing off the cold steel. We leapt onto a decrepit train, its windows fogged with the breath of the damned, and rattled down into the city's depths.
We're coming, prototype.
Poppy whispered, her words tremulous, haunted. When the train screeched to a halt, the doors opened to a city of shadows and rust. I stumbled out, the others close behind. My heart raced, But before I could take a step, something massive slammed into me, a blur of limbs and laughter. Pain exploded in my skull. The world flickered, then went black. When I came to, my head throbbing, Poppy was gone. Looming over me was a monstrous jester spider, the prototype. Its body was a patchwork of metal and meat, its limbs jointed at impossible angles, sharp as razors. Its mouths, yes, mouths, spoke in a chorus of overlapping voices, each one mocking, taunting, crawling into my ears and burrowing into my mind.
So glad you can make it.
It hissed. Nearby, the doctor knelt, shivering, before the prototype, his servitude now complete. That's when the icy horror set in. The doctor had betrayed us, gone full villain, his humanity shredded by the very evil he'd helped unleash.
What did you do to the others?
I shouted, my voice breaking. The prototype grinned, its teeth like needles, its voices harmonizing in glee.
The doctor is one of my most loyal servants. He's part of my elite hunters.
Then, with a flourish, it added,
Alright, time for the executions.
They dragged out Kissy and Poppy, both bound, their faces contorted with terror. My stomach twisted into a knot of pure dread.
Watch what happens to traitors.
The prototype sneered, driving its needle fingers straight into Kissy's chest. Blood gushed, staining her pink for a gruesome red. She died instantly, her eyes wide with agony.
No! Kissy!
Poppy howled, her porcelain face streaked with tears that sparkled like broken glass.
You monster!
I screamed, but the prototype only laughed, a sound like breaking bones. It wrenched Kissy's head from her body and hurled it at my feet. Her face stared up at me, frozen in a mask of pain. I screamed until my throat bled. But the prototype wasn't finished. It seized Poppy and rammed her doll head into the torn stump of Kissy's neck, her tiny face now protruding from the gore.
This is your new body now.
The prototype cackled, its voices blending into a symphony of madness. Poppy sobbed, trapped in her grotesque new form, but the prototype leaned closer, eyes gleaming.
Poppy, I am your brother.
It whispered, its words crawling beneath her skin like maggots.
No, you're lying!
Poppy shrieked, her voice raw with denial.
No, it's true.
The prototype murmured, and waved over a hulking, patchwork toy with a judge's wig stitched to its skull.
Poppy, it's me, your father.
The judge said, his voice warped, inhuman. Poppy's eyes flooded with new tears.
No, it can't be. What happened to you?
The prototype found me dead.
The judge answered, his words thick with the weight of death and resurrection.
But he brought me back, in this toy body. I am Elliot Ludwig. I am your father.
No way. Elliot Ludwig is the judge.
I gasped, the horror curling in my gut. The factory's founder, driven mad by grief, had turned his own son into the prototype and his adopted daughter into a doll. This was a family stitched together by tragedy, betrayal, and flesh, the most twisted family I could imagine.
As for your friend,
the prototype said, turning its many eyes to me,
we have special plans.
Its needle fingers flexed, dripping something black and oily.
No wonder you get away.
I screamed, but the world spun, and darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke again, every inch of me ached, and something deep inside me felt broken, changed forever, as if the factory's evil had finally taken root in my soul. I was so small, barely more than scraps of fabric and stuffing, my hands soft and useless, just wisps of felt stitched together. I remember the cold, hollow feeling inside me, like I was always waiting for something terrible to happen. Then the prototype appeared, looming over me with that jagged, stitched grin and glassy, unblinking eyes.
So how's the new body treating you?
He crooned, his voice dripping with a cheeriness that reeked of hidden malice. Before I could even process his words, he rammed a filthy, cracked mirror inches from my face. The reflection froze my insides, if I'd even had any blood to run cold. I saw myself, a grotesque parody of innocence, a nightmare version of a Raggedy Ann doll, my seams bulging with stuffing, eyes crudely sewn on, a jagged smile carved across my face. My full name, Ash Curry, was stitched in thick, red thread across my chest. It looked almost like it was written in blood, bold and impossible to hide, a brand for everyone to see. I looked like I'd been torn apart and stitched back together by some deranged hand, patches of gore-red fabric clashing with sickly pale cotton, stuffing leaking from half-healed wounds. That moment shattered whatever innocence I'd clung to. In an instant, everything around me seemed to dissolve into shadow. Darkness crawled inside me, an oily, suffocating presence that transformed me from a helpless toy into something monstrous, something evil. I felt my mind twist and warp, my thoughts splintering, splattered like blood across the walls of my consciousness. I became one of the prototype's elite hunters, a haunted, mutilated doll with a hunger for fear. I could sense the others, grotesque toys with missing limbs, glass eyes rolling in cracked sockets, all of us bound to him, cursed to hunt and maim in his name. The prototype's plans were sprawling, terrifying, stitched together from nightmares and cruelty, a tapestry of horror meant to smother the world. And you know what? I didn't resist. I let the darkness consume me, let that perverse thrill course through my mangled limbs. The idea of helping him spread terror, of overtaking this pitiful, unsuspecting world, started to feel right. After all, what's left for a haunted, mutilated doll but to become the stuff of nightmares, to help the prototype fill the world with blood, broken toys, and screams in the dark.
Brandon and his girlfriend Rachel, always chasing after chills, decided to check out another haunted spot. This time, it wasn't some dusty old mansion or crumbling hospital. No, they picked an abandoned Chuck E. Cheese, the same one they'd loved as kids. Back then, it felt special. Instead of some sweaty guy in a mouse suit, they had animatronics roll out the pizza, shuffling along stiff tracks, flashing fake smiles that seemed friendly. At least when you're 7. It was those animatronics, honestly, that stuck in Brandon's mind. Their robotic voices, garbled jokes, and mechanical movements, funny at first. But walking up to that shuttered building years later, with the wind shrieking through busted windows, everything felt wrong. The voices haunted him now, echoing memories twisted into something grim. As Brandon grinned at Rachel, the air cold and biting, he joked,
"Ready to save the world?"
Rachel nodded, nerves tightening her smile. They weren't here for cheap thrills this time. They'd come to uncover a secret, something awful, something linked to the government. It sounded insane, but rumor had it somebody was trying to resurrect an ancient demon, powerful enough to wipe everything out. They needed answers fast, before the nightmare became real. Inside, the darkness pressed in. Brandon fumbled his flashlight, its beam quivering over peeling murals and shattered glass. Somewhere deeper in the building, a sickening pop and crunch echoed, a noise so disgusting it made Rachel shudder.
What is that?
Rachel whispered, trembling. Brandon forced a brave face.
"Don't worry."
He tried to sound confident, but his stomach churned. Ignoring the bizarre noises, they kept moving. Eventually, they found themselves in front of a door with a government logo stamped in faded paint, a room nobody should have found in a kid's pizza place. When they flicked the lights on, everything felt colder. Satanic symbols scarred the walls. There was a crude drawing of a monstrous thing, with its name scribbled above in shaky letters, Demon Lord. Rachel barely breathed.
Is that him?
Brandon nodded, voice cracked.
"We have to stop them before they summon that thing."
His words echoed a little too loud. Something in the shadows stirred. Metal clanged. Rachel, distracted and scared, knocked over a chair. That was enough to set everything off. Suddenly, a squeak sliced through the silence, followed by a grinding, metallic banging, getting closer. Brandon's heart thudded. He grabbed Rachel's arm.
"Rachel, we gotta move. Now!"
But they were already too late. The animatronic Chuck E. Cheese came barreling towards them, eyes glowing, motors whirring, mouth twisted in a mock grin. Panicking, Brandon tried to play it cool.
"Hey there, Chuck,"
he whispered. Didn't work. The robot lunged, squeaking and shrieking, chasing them through pitch-black hallways. They ducked into an empty room, tried to catch their breath, but something smeared on the wall caught Brandon's light. It looked like coordinates, scrawled in blood, though he wasn't sure. No time to puzzle it out, not with Chuck ripping through the halls, smashing furniture, tearing through the play areas. Rachel and Brandon bolted, sprinting past ball pits and broken arcade machines toward the entrance. Chuck clattered behind them, relentless.
Shit! We gotta get out of here! Now!
Brandon shouted, adrenaline surging. The animatronic lunged again, but the floor, rotten and sagging, caved in under its weight. Chuck tumbled into a pit so deep Brandon couldn't hear him hit bottom. They clung to each other, still shaking. For once, luck was on their side. Rachel looked at Brandon, eager, desperate to end this.
Now to figure out where those coordinates lead,
she said. Turned out, those terrifying blood-stained numbers pointed to another forgotten place, an abandoned Disney World theme park. They exchanged a nervous glance. Whatever horrors waited inside, they had to face them. After all, if they didn't, the government's demon could turn every laugh into a scream, and every playground into a graveyard. Time to find out what twisted nightmares were lurking at Disney's corpse. Brandon and his girlfriend Rachel had stumbled onto something out of a nightmare, a decaying, forgotten Disney World, lurking in a part of the country that shouldn't even have one. The place looked wrong, too, like it had been rotting for decades. The colors faded to sickly pastels, the air heavy with the stench of mold, rust, and something metallic lingering beneath. It was all so impossibly out of place it made your skin crawl. But honestly, that was just the tip of the iceberg compared to what was really happening. A bunch of our friends, Ash, Luigi Kid, Corix Genshin, and Markiplier, were missing. Vanished. I was the one who'd sent them out, guilt gnawing at my insides like rats. I told them to split up and investigate a handful of abandoned places that had been rumored to be crawling with something unnatural, something the government didn't want anyone to find. Luigi Kid went off to a gutted Nintendo Land, its mascots long since gone rabid. Corey poked around the hollowed shell of an abandoned school, the kind that smelled like lost hope. Mark wandered into a decrepit Freddy's Family Diner, where the animatronics whispered in the dark. Ash got the worst of it. Playtime Company, a toy factory that hadn't made anything but misery in years. But now, nothing. Not a call, not a text. Static and suffocating silence. Rachel and I started to panic, our hearts thudding in the stillness. What if they'd uncovered something monstrous? Something about why the government was so desperate to summon an ancient demon. Not just any demon, but the kind of thing that could peel the world like an apple and laugh while it did it. It sounded insane, but the world had twisted itself into something unrecognizable. We kept picturing the worst, our friends taken, erased, or worse, their bodies used for some unspeakable ritual. So when we found this Disney World, blooming like a tumor in the middle of nowhere, we knew we had to see what was inside. Maybe, just maybe, we'd find answers about what this depraved government was really up to. We slipped past the rusted gates, their cheerful mousers bent and broken, and crept inside. The silence was thick and sticky, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. As we neared the castle, a warped mockery of fairy tales, a storm exploded overhead. But this wasn't any ordinary storm. The sky tore open with bolts of lightning that spat colors no storm should have: purple, red, sickly green. The air sizzled, burning ozone mixing with the coppery smell of blood. Rachel clung to my arm, her breath coming in sharp, terrified gasps.
What is happening?
She whispered, her voice trembling so hard I could feel it in my own bones. Fear prickled down my spine, cold and electric.
It started.
I told her, my words tasting like ashes.
We have to run. We have to stop them before they finish the ritual.
I felt it deep in my gut, the sense that we were already too late, that the world was teetering on the edge of something unspeakable.
We have to shut down that Echoes of the Lost game. If we don't, that demon's getting out.
My heart jackhammered as we sprinted through the haunted park. the shadows watching us from the crooked rides. Lightning crashed into the ground, so close I could smell burning earth.
Where is that damn hidden entrance?
Rachel screamed, her fear cracking into anger. She wasn't scared to die, not as long as we were together. But we both knew what was at stake. Every innocent soul in the world, all of them dangled over the jaws of something ancient and hungry. Anyone who survived would wish they hadn't. Years of torture, pain, and madness waiting in the dark. Then Rachel spotted it.
Over here, look!
A doorway strangled by vines, nearly invisible in the gloom.
Let's go, before it's too late.
I yelled, dragging her behind me. But fate hates hope. A shadow slid into our path, black and oily. My blood froze.
No way. We banished you to another world.
I shouted, the words catching in my throat. He stepped forward, grinning with too many teeth. SpongeBob SquarePants, the abomination we thought we'd gotten rid of forever. He grinned wider, the corners of his mouth splitting.
Yeah, but I was working for the government this whole time. I wouldn't even exist if it weren't for them. They made me. Every haunted cartoon, every freaky game character you've tried to destroy. All of them.
He peeled back the remnants of his yellow skin, showing burns, wounds, a gaping, festering hole where his right eye should have been.
Look at what you and your friends did to me.
He hissed. Rachel went rigid, her eyes wide with terror. Killing him was impossible, so we'd banished him instead, sent him screaming into some other hell. But now he was back, more broken, more furious, and more powerful than ever.
Don't worry, I'm not gonna kill you yet. You're gonna want to see how this show ends.
SpongeBob sneered, his smile stretching, splitting, almost tearing his face in half. He seized us, cold and impossibly strong, and dragged us down into the bowels of the park, where the government's secrets festered. The tunnels below were silent, the only sound our ragged breathing and the wet slap of our shoes on floors slick with blood. He shoved us into a room where the echoes of the lost game flickered on a screen, its glow barely illuminating the horror inside. The giant door in the game was opening, cracking wider, letting something unspeakable leak through.
Oh no, we're too late,
I whispered, dread suffocating me. A slow, mocking clap echoed from the shadows. Markiplier stepped forward, blood spattered on his shirt, but what chilled me most were his eyes, empty, bottomless, black as the void.
Mark, you're alive. What are you?
My voice fractured, hope dying in my throat. He cut me off, his voice twisted, guttural. Not Mark.
Haven't you heard? Mark's dead. There's only Darkiplier left now.
His words dripped with malice, each syllable like a knife.
He's been gone ever since you freed him from that game. But it wasn't Mark you saved. It was me.
Darkiplier sneered, his face warping with a cruel smile.
Now I'm in full control of his body, thanks to you,
he said, his eyes glinting with sadistic joy. He snapped his fingers, and Ash, Luigi Kid, and Korix Genshin shuffled into the light. Their faces were twisted, their grins wide and unnatural, their eyes hollow, nothing left but puppets, held together by something monstrous. Rachel broke, collapsing to the blood-soaked floor, sobbing so hard it sounded like she might shatter.
Stop this nightmare, please.
She begged, her voice raw and broken. She couldn't even look at them. I'd never seen her so afraid, so utterly destroyed. Rage flared in my chest, white-hot and blinding.
I'm going to kill you. Not today, not tomorrow, but I'm going to kill you.
I screamed at Darkiplier, my voice echoing off the filthy walls. He just laughed, the sound sharp and inhuman.
You want to know why it's so quiet around here?
He grabbed me by the throat, his grip like iron, and dragged me down a corridor. The stench hit me first, thick, sweet, suffocating. Then I saw it, the floor blanketed with corpses, bodies stacked on bodies, every single one a member of the government. Their faces frozen in terror, throats torn out, eyes wide and staring. Blood pooled everywhere, soaking into the cracked tiles, painting the room in horror. Darkiplier leaned in, his voice a whisper that seemed to crawl inside my skull.
You started this. Now you get to watch the world end. They thought they could control me.
Darkoplier sneered, his eyes blazing with a twisted, almost inhuman excitement that made my stomach clench. There was something unnatural in the way he stared at me, like he was barely holding back something monstrous and ancient. Before I could react, his cold hands shoved me hard, sending me stumbling back into the dim, flickering room where Rachel waited, her face pale and streaked with tears. Mario was there too, alive, against all odds, but there was something off about him. His eyes were wild, his smile too wide, as if something inside him had snapped. But which Mario was it? In this nightmare, it was impossible to tell who, or what, was real anymore.
She's almost here, Master.
Mario intoned with a voice that didn't quite sound like his own. The words slithered through the air, icy and malicious. A chill raced down my spine, prickling every inch of my skin with terror.
Finally, now you get to see how it all ends.
Darkoplier declared, his voice thick with anticipation and madness. SpongeBob and Mario began to laugh, not the innocent, playful laughter I remembered, but a hideous, guttural cackling that echoed and bounced off the walls like the cries of the damned. Their faces twisted with glee, eyes shining with insanity. The sound was so unnatural, so bone-chillingly wrong, I could barely stay on my feet. I just stood there, paralyzed by fear and disbelief, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. After all the battles, every desperate fight, all the years we'd spent hunting down these haunted video game freaks and cartoon nightmares, had we really lost? Was this how it ended? Despair clawed at my mind, swallowing me whole. Was anything we'd done worth it? All the pain, the horror, the friends we'd lost along the way, was it all for nothing? My mind spiraled down into a pit of hopelessness, the darkness pressing in from all sides. Then the door groaned open, the sound deep and guttural, like the world itself was crying out in pain. Through the jagged opening, the demon lord emerged. No other name, just that, towering and grotesque, a monstrous silhouette squeezing its bulk through the shattered TV screen. The boundaries of reality seemed to warp and ripple around him, as if he was tearing a hole in the fabric of the universe just by existing. Shadows twisted and writhed at his feet, and the air grew thick with the coppery scent of blood.
Welcome home,
Darkoplier whispered, his tone almost tender, a lover's greeting to something truly evil. The demon lord barely had time to set one monstrous foot on the ground before chaos erupted. The entire building shuddered violently, splintering and cracking as if some monstrous heartbeat pulsed through its walls. He didn't spare us a glance. With a single, horrifying motion, he raised a sword forged from nightmares and agony, its blade glistening with fresh gore, and plunged it deep into the ground. The world convulsed. The sky split open and bled a torrent of thick, hot blood that hammered down on us in sheets, staining everything crimson. The ground trembled beneath my feet, and gravestones erupted from the earth, shooting skyward in a macabre display, exploding in showers of bone and shattered stone. From the shredded earth, the dead began to claw their way up, rotting hands tearing through soil, empty eye sockets blazing with hate and hunger. They dragged themselves into this broken world, their screams mingling with the roar of fire and the shrieks of the living. The ground split open, gaping fissures leading straight down into hell itself, and an endless tide of monsters poured out, grotesque, twisted things with too many eyes, too many mouths, their bodies dripping with gore and malice. TVs everywhere burst apart, showering the room with sparks and shards of glass. From their broken screens, cartoon monsters crawled, their faces distorted with agony, their laughter glitched and echoing. Video game characters, glitched and consumed by darkness, stumbled into the chaos, their every movement jerky and wrong.
Now, you see, I am the Dark King,
Darkoplier announced, his face alight with a sick satisfaction as he surveyed the carnage. He looked almost proud, as if this hellscape was his greatest masterpiece. And then, as if summoned by the nightmare, Ash, Corey, and Luigi Kid stepped through swirling, pulsating portals that tore open the air itself. Their faces were pale, eyes wide with horror, but there was a grim determination in their posture. Who knew what they had seen on the other side? In the blink of an eye, Darkapleer vanished, melting into the darkness. The demon lord was gone too, leaving only the echo of his unimaginable power. And so we were left, trapped in the ruins of our world, surrounded by howling monsters and rivers of blood, staring at a reality that had finally shattered, a world that had become a living, breathing hell. The screams never stopped. The nightmare was only beginning.